Hello there, everybody. Sorry I'm a little bit late. Let us change our screen. Hope that you guys are doing well. Hello, Kara Sutra and Albel. Albel, I hope that you're doing well today. Pretzel Rocks, why are you continuing to show songs when you're not playing anymore? Yes, I unmuted my mic. I am so happy for myself every time I remember I can English. I can English really well. Every time I remember to unmute my mic now. Because now I'm like, oh my god, did I unmute it? I'm glad you're doing okay, Albel. Going home today. You know, I sleep half the day away again most Saturdays. Weeks are hard. Weekdays are very tiring. You ready for sleepy stories and happy times? Me too. I will say I'm not only gonna stream for 40 minutes or so. I'm gonna read for 50 minutes and then I'm gonna take a quick break because it took me 2 hours to get my dryer started, which is a whole story we're not going to get into. So I've got a timer set. So I will be taking a quick break after about 50 minutes to turn the dryer off, hang some clothes up, and then I will be back. But not now. 40 minutes from now. So for now, let us begin our lovely story. The Patchwork Girl of Oz. Hopefully without any tree-humping donkeys. Not that the tree-humping donkey wasn't awesome, because he was. Alright, let us begin. I should announce when I'm going live on my Discord. Let me do that. Oh, I did announce that I was going live. Yay! I'm IR Pro Streamer. You need to pack to go home and you're hungry. Well, go take care of things, Albel. Go do what you need to do. Take care of yourself. I'll be here for a while. Oh, you know what? I'm kind of an idiot. Yeah, IR Pro Streamer. I forgot to load chatbot. So see, by the time Albel gets back, I may have actually started reading the story, because I may have actually done everything I need to do. Okay, that's not gonna work. Sorry, I turned a fan on and that is just too loud. You guys don't want to listen to my fan. You want to listen to the fire and the ocean. Disconnect everything. Okay. Now the stream can begin. So, welcome. Tonight we are reading, again, The Patchwork Girl of Oz. There's a big long prologue to this, and I will go ahead and read it because why not? Through the kindness of Dorothy Gale of Kansas, afterward Princess Dorothy of Oz, an humble writer in the United States of America was once appointed Royal Historian of Oz, with the privilege of writing the chronicle of that wonderful fairyland. But after making 6 books about the adventures of those interesting but queer people who live in the land of Oz, the historian learned with sorrow that by an edict of the supreme ruler, Ozma of Oz, her country would thereafter be rendered invisible to all who lived outside its borders, and that all communication with Oz would, in the future, be cut off. The children who had learned to look for the books about Oz and who loved the stories about the gay and happy people inhabiting that favored country were as sorry as their historian that there would be no more books of Oz stories. They wrote many letters asking if the historian did not know of some adventures to write about that had happened before the land of Oz was shut out from all the rest of the world. But he did not know any. Finally, one of the children inquired why we couldn't hear from Princess Dorothy by wireless telegraph, which would enable her to communicate to the historian whatever happened in the far-off land of Oz without his seeing her, or even knowing just where Oz is. That seemed a good idea, so the historian rigged up a high tower in his backyard and took lessons in wireless telegraphy. That's good. And took lessons in wireless telegraphy until he understood it, and then began to call Princess Dorothy of Oz by sending messages into the air. Now, it wasn't likely that Dorothy would be looking for wireless messages, or would heed the call, but one thing the historian was sure of, and that was that the powerful sorceress Glinda would know what he was doing, and that he desired to communicate with Dorothy. For Glinda has a big book in which is recorded every event that takes place anywhere in the world, just the moment that it happens, and so of course the book would tell her about the wireless message. And that was the way Dorothy heard that the historian wanted to speak with her, and there was a shaggy man in the land of Oz who knew how to telegraph a wireless reply. The result was that the historian begged so hard to be told the latest news of Oz, so that he could write it down for the children to read, that Dorothy asked permission of Ozma, and Ozma graciously consented. That is why, after 2 long years of waiting, another Oz story is now presented to the children of America. This would not have been possible had not some clever man invented the wireless, and an equally clever child suggested the idea of reaching the mysterious land of Oz by its means. So this story is only for the children of America. The rest of you have to leave. I'm sorry. Use your words. I am trying to use my words to King Mob. How are you doing? I don't know why Pretzel Rocks keeps showing now playing when I don't even have it open. For America. The stories are only for America. Okay, maybe that will get rid of that. We'll not have any more messages from Pretzel Rocks. Alright, so that was the prologue. Hopefully I will do a better job of reading the actual story. Let's take another drink. Okay, and for those of you who were here last stream and saw the movie, I'm very sorry for your trauma. Now that we chased the foreigner out of Oz, we need to send New England back to Old England. Yeah. Let's just get rid of them all. It's just an odd prologue. It's like, would these stories not have been published in other countries? I don't know. I are just a simple girl who doesn't understand what she's reading. So we have our first chapter. Ojo and Unc Nunky. Did you watch Return to Oz? No. No, we watched The Patchwork Girl of Oz. It had a tree humping donkey. And that was the highlight. So yeah. Never watched Return to Oz. Well, Return to Oz is just a mashed up compilation of Ozma of Oz and the wonderful world of Oz, or the wonderful land of Oz. This is my yard. Never thought to film it. Was see? You could have made a movie. Yeah, I haven't heard very good things about it. I would rather read the books, and there are 14 books. I didn't realize there were so many. So I've read 2. This will be the 3rd. That leaves us 11 more books to read. I think that will be awesome. Okay, back to the reading. "Where's the butter, Unc Nunky?" asked Ojo. Unc looked out the window and stroked his long beard. Then he turned to the Munchkin boy and shook his head. "Isn't," said he. "Isn't any butter? That's too bad, Unc." "Where's the jam, then?" inquired Ojo, standing on a stool so he could look through all the shelves of the cupboard. But Unc Nunky shook his head again. "Gone," he said. "No jam either? And no cake? No jelly? No apples? Nothing but bread?" "All," said Unc, again stroking his beard as he gazed from the window. The little boy brought the stool and sat beside his uncle, munching the dry bread slowly and seeming in deep thought. "Nothing grows in our yard but the bread tree," he mused. "And there are only 2 more loaves on that tree, and they're not ripe yet. Tell me, Unc, why are we so poor?" The old Munchkin turned and looked at Ojo. He had kindly eyes, but he hadn't smiled or laughed in so long that the boy had forgotten that Unc Nunky could look any other way than solemn. And Unc never spoke any more words than he was obliged to, so his little nephew, who lived alone with him, had learned to understand a great deal from one word. "Why are we so poor, Unc?" repeated the boy. "Not," said the old Munchkin. "I think we are," declared Ojo. "What have we got?" "House," said Unc Nunky. "I know, but everyone in the Land of Oz has a place to live. What else, Unc?" "Bread. I'm eating the last loaf that's ripe. There, I've put aside your share, Unc. It's on the table, so you can eat it when you get hungry. But when that is gone, what shall we eat, Unc?" The old man shifted in his chair, but merely shook his head. "Of course," said Ojo, who was obliged to talk because his uncle would not. "No one starves in the Land of Oz either. There's plenty for everyone, you know. Only, if it isn't just where you happen to be, you must go where it is." The aged Munchkin wriggled again and stared at his small nephew as if disturbed by his argument. "By tomorrow morning," the boy went on, "we must go where there is something to eat, or we shall grow very hungry and become very unhappy." "Where?" asked Unc. "Where shall we go?" "I don't know, I'm sure," replied Ojo. "But you must know, Unc. You must have traveled in your time because you're so old." "I don't remember it, because ever since I could remember, everything we've lived right here in this lonesome round house, with a little garden back of it and the thick woods all around. All I've ever seen of the great Land of Oz, Unc dear, is the view of that mountain over at the south, where they say the Hammerheads live, who won't let anybody go by them, and that mountain at the north, where they say nobody lives." "One," declared Unc, correcting him. "Oh yes, one family lives there, I've heard. That's the crooked magician, who is named Dr. Pipt, and his wife, Margaret. One year you told me about them. I think it took you a whole year, Unc, to say as much as I've just said about the crooked magician and his wife. They live high up on the mountain, and the good Munchkin country, where the fruits and flowers grow, is just the other side. It's funny you and I should live here all alone in the middle of the forest, isn't it?" "Yes," said Unc. "Then let's go away and visit the Munchkin country and its jolly good-natured people. I'd love to get a sight of something besides woods, Unc Nunky." "Too little," said Unc. "Why, I'm not so little as I used to be," answered the boy earnestly. "I think I can walk as far and as fast through the woods as you can, Unc. And now that nothing grows in our backyard that is good to eat, we must go where there is food." Unc Nunky made no reply for a time. Then he shut down the window and turned his chair to face the room, and the sun was sinking behind the treetops, and it was growing cool. By and by, Ojo lighted the fire, and the logs blazed freely in the broad fireplace. The two sat in the firelight a long time, the old white-bearded Munchkin and the little boy. Both were thinking. When it grew quite dark outside, Ojo said, "Eat your bread, Unc, and then we will go to bed." But Unc Nunky did not eat the bread. Neither did he go directly to bed. Long after his little nephew was sound asleep in the corner of the room, the old man sat by the fire, thinking. The age when parents just rented anything that looked like a kid's film. Yeah, Yeah, I remember seeing a few movies that looked like they would be kids' films, and they were not in any way a kids' film. The Crooked Magician. Just at dawn next morning, Unc Nunkie laid his hand tenderly on Ojo's head and awakened him. "Come," he said. Ojo dressed. He wore blue silk stockings, blue knee pants with gold buckles, a blue ruffled waist, and a jacket of bright blue braided with gold. His shoes were of blue leather and turned up at the toes, which were pointed. His hat had a peaked crown and a flat brim, and round the brim was a row of tiny golden bells that tinkled when he moved. This was the native costume of those who inhabited the Munchkin country of the Land of Oz, so Unc Nunkie's dress was much like that of his nephew. Instead of shoes, the old man wore boots with turn-over tops, and his blue coat had wide cuffs of gold braid. The boy noticed that his uncle had not eaten the bread, and supposed the old man had not been hungry. Ojo was hungry, though, so he divided the piece of bread upon the table and ate his half for breakfast, washing it down with fresh, cool water from the brook. Unc put the other piece of bread in his jacket pocket, after which he again said, as he walked out through the doorway, "Come." Ojo was well pleased. He was dreadfully tired of living all alone in the woods and wanted to travel and see people. For a long time he had wished to explore the beautiful Land of Oz in which they lived. When they were outside, Unc simply latched the door and started up the path. No one would disturb their little house, even if anyone came so far into the thick forest while they were gone. At the foot of the mountain that separated the country of the Munchkins from the country of the Gilkins, the path divided. One way led to the left and the other to the right, straight up the mountain. Unc Nunkie took his right-hand path, and Ojo followed without asking why. He knew it would take them to the house of the Crooked Magician, whom he had never seen, but who was their nearest neighbor. All the morning they trudged up the mountain path, and at noon Unc and Ojo sat on a fallen tree trunk and ate the last of the bread which the old Munchkin had placed in his pocket. Then they started on again, and 2 hours later came in sight of the house of Dr. Pipt. It was a big house, round, as were all the Munchkin houses, and painted blue, which is the distinctive color of the Munchkin country of Oz. There was a pretty garden around the house, where blue trees and blue flowers grew in abundance, and in one place were beds of blue cabbages, blue carrots, and blue lettuce, all of which were delicious to eat. In Dr. Pipt's garden grew bun trees, cake trees, cream puff bushes, blue buttercups which yielded excellent blue butter, and a row of chocolate caramel plants. Paths of blue gravel divided the vegetable and flower beds, and a wider path led up to the front door. The place was in a clearing on the mountain, but a little way off was the grim forest which completely surrounded it. Unc knocked at the door of the house, and a chubby, pleasant-faced woman dressed all in blue opened it and greeted the visitors with a smile. "Ah," said Ojo, "you must be Dame Margolette, the good wife of Dr. Pipt." "I am, my dear, and all strangers are welcome to my house." "May we see the famous magician, madame?" "He is very busy just now," she said, shaking her head doubtfully. "But come in and let me give you something to eat, for you must have traveled far in order to get to our lonely place." "We have," replied Ojo, as he and Unc entered the house. "We have come from a far lonelier place than this." "A lonelier place? And in the Munchkin country?" she exclaimed. "Then it must be somewhere in the Blue Forest." "It is, good Dame Margolette." "Dear me," she said, looking at the man. "You must be Unc Nunkie, known as the Silent One." Then she looked at the boy. "And you must be Ojo the Unlucky," she added. "Yes," said Unc. "I never knew I was called the Unlucky," said Ojo soberly. "But it is really a good name for me." "Well," remarked the woman as she bustled around the room and set the table and brought food from the cupboard, "you were unlucky to live all alone in that dismal forest, which is far worse than the forest around here. But perhaps your luck will change now you are away from it. If during your travels you can manage to lose that Un at the beginning of your name, Unlucky, you will then become Ojo the Lucky, which will be a great improvement." "How can I lose that Un, Dame Margolette?" "I do not know how, but you must keep the matter in mind, and perhaps the chance will come to you," she replied. Ojo had never eaten such a fine meal in all his life. There was a savory stew, smoking hot, a dish of blue peas, a bowl of sweet milk of a delicate blue tint, and a blue pudding with blue plums in it. When the visitors had eaten heartily of this fare, the woman said to them, "Do you wish to see Dr. Pipt on business or for pleasure?" Unc shook his head. "We are traveling," replied Ojo, "and we stopped at your house just to rest and refresh ourselves. I do not think Unc Nunkie cares very much to see the famous crooked magician, but for my part I am curious to look at such a great man." The woman seemed thoughtful. "I remember that Unc Nunkie and my husband used to be friends many years ago," she said, "so perhaps they will be glad to meet again. The magician is very busy, as I said, but if you will promise not to disturb him, you may come into his workshop and watch him prepare a wonderful charm." "Thank you," replied the boy, much pleased. "I would like to do that." She led the way to a great domed hall at the back of the house, which was the magician's workshop. There was a row of windows extending nearly around the side of the circular room, which rendered the place very light, and there was a back door in addition to the one leading to the front part of the house. Before the row of windows, a broad seat was built, and there were some chairs and benches in the room besides. At one end stood a great fireplace, in which a blue log was blazing, with a blue flame, and over the fire hung 4 kettles in a row, all bubbling and steaming at a great rate. The magician was stirring all 4 of these kettles at the same time, 2 with his hands and 2 with his feet, to the latter wooden ladles being strapped, for this man was so very crooked that his legs were as handy as his arms. Unc Nunkie came forward to greet his old friend, but not being able to shake either his hands or his feet, which were all occupied in stirring, he patted the magician's bald head and asked, "What?" "Ah, it's the silent one," remarked Dr. Pipt, without looking up, "and he wants to know what I'm making. Well, when it is quite finished, this compound will be the wonderful powder of life, which no one knows how to make but myself. Whenever it is sprinkled on anything, that thing will at once come to life, no matter what it is. It takes me several years to make this magic powder, but at this moment I am pleased to say it is nearly done. You see, I am making it for my good wife Margolette, who wants to use some of it for a purpose of her own. Sit down and make yourself comfortable, Unc Nunkie, and after I finish my task, I will talk to you." "You must know," said Margolette, when they were all seated together on the broad window seat, "that my husband foolishly gave away all the powder of life he first made to old Mombi the witch, who used to live in the country of the Gilkins to the north of here. Mombi gave to Dr. Pipt a powder of perpetual youth in exchange for his powder of life. But she cheated him wickedly, for the powder of youth was no good and could work no magic at all." "Perhaps the powder of life couldn't either," said Ojo. "Yes, it is perfection," she declared. "The first lot we tested on our glass cat, which not only began to live, but has lived ever since. She's somewhere around the house now." "A glass cat!" exclaimed Ojo, astonished. "Yes, she makes a very pleasant companion, but admires herself a little more than is considered modest, and she positively refuses to catch mice," exclaimed Margolette. "My husband made the cat some pink brains, but they proved to be too high-bred in particular for a cat, so she thinks it is undignified in her to catch mice. Also, she has a pretty blood-red heart, but it is made of a stone, a ruby, I think, and so is rather hard and unfeeling. I think the next glass cat the magician makes will have neither brains nor heart, for then it will not object to catching mice and may prove of some use to us." "What did old Mombi the witch do with the powder of life your husband gave her?" asked the boy. "She brought Jack Pumpkinhead to life, for one thing," was the reply. "I suppose you've heard of Jack Pumpkinhead. He is now living near the Emerald City and is a great favorite with the Princess Ozma, who rules all the land of Oz." "No, I've never heard of him," remarked Ojo. "I'm afraid I don't know much about the land of Oz. You see, I've lived all my life with Unc Nunkie, the silent one, and there was no one to tell me anything." "That is one reason you are Ojo the Unlucky," said the woman in a sympathetic tone. "The more one knows, the luckier he is, for knowledge is the greatest gift in life. But tell me, please, what you intend to do with this new lot of powder of life which Dr. Pipt is making. He said his wife wanted it for some special purpose." "So I do," she answered. "I want it to bring my patchwork girl to life." "Oh, a patchwork girl? What is that?" Ojo asked, for this seemed even more strange and unusual than a glass cat. "I think I must show you my patchwork girl," said Margolette, laughing at the boy's astonishment, "for she is rather difficult to explain. But first I will tell you that for many years I have longed for a servant to help me with the housework and to cook the meals and wash the dishes. No servant will come over here because the place is so lonely and out of the way, so my clever husband, the crooked magician, proposed that I make a girl out of some sort of material and that he would make her live by sprinkling over her the powder of life. This seemed an excellent suggestion, and at once Dr. Pitt set to work to make a new batch of his magic powder. He has been at it a long, long while, and so I have had plenty of time to make the girl. Yet that task was not so easy as you may suppose. At first I couldn't think what to make her of, but finally, in searching through a chest, I came across an old patchwork quilt which my grandmother once made when she was young. "What is a patchwork quilt?" asked Ojo. "A bed quilt made of patches of different kinds of colors, the cloth, all neatly sewed together. The patches are of all shapes and sizes, so a patchwork quilt is a very pretty and gorgeous thing to look at. Sometimes it is called a crazy quilt because the patches and colors are so mixed up. We never have used my grandmother's many-colored patchwork quilt, handsome as it is, for we Munchkins do not care for any color other than blue, so it has been packed away in the chest for about 100 years. When I found it, I said to myself that it would do nicely for my servant girl, for when she was brought to life, she would not be proud nor haughty, as the glass cat is, for such a dreadful mixture of colors would discourage her from trying to be as dignified as the blue Munchkins are." "Is blue the only respectable color, then?" inquired Ojo. "Yes, for a Munchkin. All our country is blue, you know. But in other parts of Oz, the people favor different colors. At the Emerald City, where our Princess Ozma lives, green is the popular color. But all Munchkins prefer blue to anything else, and when my housework girl is brought to life, she will find herself to be so many unpopular colors that she'll never dare to be rebellious or impudent, as servants are sometimes liable to be, when they are made the same way their mistresses are." Unc Nunkie nodded approval. "Good idea," he said, and that was a long speech for Unc Nunkie because it was 2 words. "So I cut up the quilt," continued Margolette, "and made from it a very well-shaped girl, which I stuffed with cotton wadding. I will show you what a good job I did," and she went to a tall cupboard and threw open the doors. Then back she came, lugging in her arms the patchwork girl, which she set upon the bench and propped up so that the figure would not tumble over. Getting into Return to Oz territory. Yeah, I think, from what I've heard, Return to Oz was a mixture of books. And all of the books kind of touch on each other. Like Ozma of Oz touched on Ginger, who was in this book. And okay, we've got another about 25 minutes of reading before I have to go shut the dryer off, so... The Patchwork Girl. Ojo examined this curious contrivance with wonder. The Patchwork Girl was taller than he when she stood upright, and her body was plump and round, because it had been so neatly stuffed with cotton. Margolette had first made the girl's form from the patchwork quilt, and then she dressed it with a patchwork skirt, and then apron with pockets in it, using the same gay material throughout. Upon the feet she had sewn a pair of red leather shoes with pointed toes. All the fingers and thumbs of the girl's hand had been carefully formed and stitched, and stuffed at the edges, with gold plates at the ends to serve as fingernails. "She will have to work when she comes to life," said Margolette. The head of the Patchwork Girl was the most curious part of her. While she waited for her husband to finish making his powder of life, the woman had found ample time to complete the head as her fancy dictated, and she realized that a good servant's head must be properly constructed. The hair was of brown yarn and hung down her neck in several neat braids. Her eyes were 2 silver suspender buttons cut from a pair of the magician's old trousers, and they were sewed on with black thread which formed the pupils of the eyes. Margolette had puzzled over the ears for some time, for these were important if the servant was to hear distinctly. But finally she had made them out of thin plates of gold and attached them in place by means of stitches through tiny holes bored in the metal. Gold is the most common metal in the land of Oz, and is used for many purposes because it is soft and pliable. The woman had cut a slit for the Patchwork Girl's mouth and sewn 2 rows of white pearls in it for teeth, using a strip of scarlet plush for a tongue. This mouth Ojo considered very artistic and lifelike, and Margolette was pleased when the boy praised it. There were almost too many patches on the face of the girl for her to be considered strictly beautiful, for one cheek was yellow and the other red, her chin blue, her forehead purple, and the center where her nose had been formed and padded a bright yellow. "You ought to have had her face all pink," suggested the boy. "I suppose so, but I had no pink cloth," replied the woman. "Still, I could not see as it matters much, for I wish my patchwork girl to be useful rather than ornamental. If I get tired of looking at her patched face, I can whitewash it." "Has she any brains?" asked Ojo. "No. I forgot all about the brains," exclaimed the woman. "I'm glad you reminded me of them, for it is not too late to supply them by any means. Until she's brought to life, I can do anything I please with this girl. But I must be careful not to give her too much brains, and those she has must be such they are fitted to the station she is to occupy in life. In other words, her brains mustn't be very good." "Wrong," said Unc Nunky. "No, I'm sure I'm right about that," returned the woman. "He means," explained Ojo, "that unless your servant has good brains, she won't know how to obey you properly, or do the things you ask her to do." "Well, that may be true," agreed Margolette. "But, on the contrary, a servant with too much brains is sure to become independent and high and mighty and feel above her work. This is a very delicate task, as I said, and I must take care to give the girl just the right quantity of the right sort of brains. I want her to know just enough, but not too much." With this she went to another cupboard, which was filled with shelves. All the shelves were lined with blue glass bottles, neatly labeled by the magician to show what they contained. One whole shelf was marked brain furniture, and the bottles on the shelf were labeled obedience, cleverness, judgment, courage, ingenuity, amiability, learning, truth, posy, self-reliance. "Let me see," said Margolette. "All of those qualities she must have. Obedience, first of all." And she took down the bottle bearing that label and poured from it upon a dish several grains of the content. "Amiability is also good, and truth." She poured into the dish a quantity from each of these bottles. "I think that will do," she continued, "for the other qualities are not needed in a servant." Unc Nunky, who was with Ojo, stood beside her, touched the bottle marked cleverness. "Little," said he. "A little cleverness? Well, perhaps you are right, sir," said she, and she was about to take down the bottle when the crooked magician suddenly called to her excitedly from the fireplace, "Quick, Margolette, come and help me." She ran to her husband's side at once and helped him lift the 4 kettles from the fire. Their contents had all boiled away, leaving in the bottom of each kettle a few grains of fine white powder. Very carefully the magician removed this powder, placing it all together in a golden dish where he mixed it with a golden spoon. When the mixture was complete, there was scarcely a handful all told. "That," said Dr. Pipt in a pleased and triumphant tone, "is the wonderful powder of life which I alone in the world know how to make. It has taken me nearly 6 years to prepare those precious grains of dust, but the little heap on that dish is worth the price of a kingdom, and many a king would give all he has to possess it. When it has become cooled, I will place it in a small bottle, but meantime I must watch it carefully, lest a gust of wind blow it away or scatter it." Unc Nunky, Margolette, and the magician all stood looking at the marvelous powder, but Ojo was more interested than just in the Patchwork Girl's brains. Thinking it both unfair and unkind to deprive her of any good qualities that were handy, the boy took down every bottle on the shelf and poured some of the contents in Margolette's dish. No one saw him do this, for they were all looking at the powder of life. But soon the woman remembered what she had been doing and came back to the cupboard. "Let's see," she remarked. "I was about to give my girl a little cleverness, which is the doctor's substitute for intelligence, a quality he has not yet learned how to manufacture." Taking down the bottle of cleverness, she added some of the powder to the heap of the dish. Ojo became a bit uneasy at this, for he had already put quite a lot of cleverness powder in the dish, but he dared not interfere, and so he comforted himself with the thought that one cannot have too much cleverness. Margolette now carried the dish of brains to the bench. Ripping the seams of the patch on the girl's forehead, she placed the powder within the head and then sewed up the seam as neatly and securely as before. "My girl is all ready for your powder of life, my dear," she said to her husband, but the magician replied, "This powder may not be used before tomorrow morning, but I think it is now cool enough to be bottled." He selected a small gold bottle with a pepper box top, so that the powder might be sprinkled on any object through the small holes. Very carefully he placed the powder of life in the gold bottle and then locked it up in a drawer of his cabinet. "At least," said he, rubbing his hands together gleefully, I have ample leisure for a good talk with my old friend Unc Nunky. So let us sit down cozily and enjoy ourselves. After stirring those 4 bottles for 6 years, I am glad to have a little rest. You will have to do most of the talking, said Ojo, for Unc is called the Silent One and uses few words. I know, but that renders your uncle a most agreeable companion and gossip, declared Dr. Pipt. Most people talk too much, so it is a relief to find one who talks too little. Ojo looked at the magician with much awe and curiosity. Don't you find it very annoying to be so crooked? He asked. No, I am quite proud of my person, was the reply. I suppose I am the only crooked magician in all the world. Some others are accused of being crooked, but I am the only genuine. He was really very crooked, and Ojo wondered how he managed to do so many things with such a twisted body. When he sat down upon a crooked chair that had been made to fit him, one knee was under his chin and the other near the small of his back. But he was a cheerful man, and his face bore a pleasant and agreeable expression. I am not allowed to perform magic except for my own amusement, he told his visitors as he lighted a pipe with the crooked stem and began to smoke. Too many people were working magic in the land of Oz, so our lovely Princess Ozma put a stop to it. I think she was quite right. There were several wicked witches who caused a lot of trouble. But now they are all out of business, and only the great sorceress, Glinda the Good, is permitted to practice her arts, which never harm anybody. The Wizard of Oz, who used to be a humbug and knew no magic at all, has been taking lessons of Glinda, and I'm told he is getting to be a pretty good wizard, but he is merely the assistant of the great sorceress. I have the right to make a servant girl for my wife, you know, or a glass cat to catch her mice, which she refuses to do, but I am forbidden to work magic for others or to use it as a profession. Magic must be a very interesting study, said Ojo. It truly is, asserted the magician. In my time, I've performed some magical feats that were worthy the skill of Glinda the Good. For instance, there's the powder of life, and my liquid of petrification, which is contained in that bottle on the shelf yonder over the window. What does the liquid of petrification do? Inquired the boy. Turns everything it touches to solid marble. It's an invention of my own, and I find it very useful. Once 2 of those dreadful Kalidas with bodies like bears and heads like tigers came here from the forest to attack us. But I sprinkled some of that liquid on them, and instantly they turned to marble. I now use them as ornamental statuary in my garden. This table looks to you like wood, and once it really was wood, but I sprinkled a few drops of the liquid of petrification on it, and now it's marble. It will never break nor wear out. Fine, said Unc Nunky, wagging his head and stroking his long gray beard. Dear me, what a chatterbox you're getting to be, Unc, remarked the magician, who was pleased with the compliment. But just then there was a scratching at the back door, and a shrill voice cried, Let me in! Hurry up, can't you? Let me in! Margaret got up and went to the door. Ask like a good cat, then, she said. Meow. There, does that suit your royal highness? Asked the voice in scornful assent. Yes, that's proper cat talk, declared the woman, and opened the door. At once a cat entered, came to the center of the room, and stopped short at the sight of strangers. Ojo and Unc Nunky both stared at it with wide open eyes, for surely no such curious creature had ever existed before, even in the land of Oz. The Glass Cat. The cat was made of glass, so clear and transparent that you could see through it as easily as through a window. In the top of its head, however, was a mass of delicate pink balls, which looked like jewels, and it had a heart made of a blood-red ruby. The eyes were 2 large emeralds, but aside from these colors, all the rest of the animal was clear glass, and it had a spun glass tail that was really beautiful. Well, Doc Pipt, do you mean to introduce us or not? Demanded the cat in a tone of annoyance. Seems to me you are forgetting your manners. Excuse me, returned the magician. This is Unc Nunky, the descendant of the former kings of the Munchkins, before this country became a part of the land of Oz. He needs a haircut, observed the cat, washing its face. True, replied Unc with a low chuckle of amusement. But he has lived alone in the heart of the forest for many years, the magician explained. And although there is a barbarous country, there are no barbers there. Who is the dwarf? Asked the cat. "It's not a dwarf, but a boy," answered the magician. "You have never seen a boy before. He is now small because he is young. With more years he will grow big and become as tall as Unc Nunkie." "Oh, is that magic?" the glass animal inquired. "Yes, but it is nature's magic, which is more powerful than any art known to man. For instance, my magic made you, and made you live. And it was a poor job because you are useless and a bother to me. But I can't make you grow. You will always be the same size, and the same saucy, inconsiderate glass cat with pink brains and a hard ruby heart." "No one can regret more than I the fact that you made me," asserted the cat, crouching upon the floor and slowly swaying its spun glass tail from side to side. "Your world is a very uninteresting place. I've wandered through your gardens and in the forest until I'm tired of it all. And when I come into the house, the conversation of your fat wife and of yourself bores me dreadfully." "That is because I gave you different brains from those we ourselves possess, and much too good for a cat," returned Dr. Pipt. "Can't you take them out, then, and replace them with pebbles so that I won't feel above my station in life?" asked the cat pleadingly. "Perhaps so. I'll try it after I've brought the Patchwork Girl to life," he said. The cat walked up to the bench on which the Patchwork Girl reclined and looked at her attentively. "Are you going to make that dreadful thing live?" she asked. The magician nodded. "It is intended to be my wife's servant maid," he said. "When she is alive, she will do all our work and mind the house. But you are not to order her around, Bungle, as you do us. You must treat the Patchwork Girl respectfully." "I won't. I couldn't respect such a bundle of scraps under any circumstances." "If you don't, there will be more scraps than you will like," cried Margaret angrily. "Why didn't you make her pretty to look at?" asked the cat. "You made me pretty. Very pretty indeed. And I love to watch my pink brains roll around when they're working, and to see my precious red heart beat." She went to a long mirror as she said this, and stood before it, looking at herself with an air of much pride. "That poor Patch thing will hate herself when she's once alive," continued the cat. "If I were you, I'd use her for a mop and make another servant that is prettier." "You have a perverted taste," snapped Margaret, much annoyed at this frank criticism. "I think the Patchwork Girl is beautiful, considering what she's made of. Even the rainbow hasn't as many colors, and you must admit that the rainbow is a pretty thing." The glass cat yawned and stretched herself upon the floor. "Have your own way," she said. "I'm sorry for the Patchwork Girl, that's all." Ojo and Unc Nunkie slept that night in the magician's house, and the boy was glad to stay away because he was anxious to see the Patchwork Girl brought to life. The glass cat was also a wonderful creature to little Ojo, who had never seen or known anything of magic before, although he lived in the fairyland of Oz ever since he was born. Back there in the woods, nothing unusual ever happened. Unc Nunkie, who might have been king of the Munchkins, had not his people united with all the other countries of Oz in acknowledging Ozma their sole ruler, had retired into this forgotten forest with his baby nephew, and they had lived all alone there. Only that the neglected garden had failed to grow food for them, they would have always lived in the solitary blue forest. But now they had started out to mingle with other people, and the first place they came to proved so interesting that Ojo could scarcely sleep a wink all night. Margaret was an excellent cook and gave them a fine breakfast. While they were all engaged in eating, the good woman said, "This is the last meal I shall have to cook for some time, for right after breakfast Dr. Pipt has promised to bring my new servant to life. I shall let her wash the breakfast dishes and sweep and dust the house. What a relief it will be." "It will indeed relieve you of much drudgery," said the magician. "By the way, Margaret, I thought I saw you getting some brains from the cupboard while I was busy with my kettles. What qualities have you given your new servant?" "Only those that an humble servant requires," she answered. "I do not wish her to feel above her station, as the glass cat does. That would make her discontented and unhappy, for of course she must always be a servant." Ojo was somewhat disturbed as he listened to this, and the boy began to fear he had done wrong in adding all those different qualities to the lot Margaret had prepared for the servant. But it was too late now for regret, since all the brains were securely sewn up inside the Patchwork Girl's head. He might have confessed what he had done and thus allowed Margaret and her husband to change the brains, but he was afraid of incurring their anger. He believed that Unc had seen him add to the brains, and Unc had not said a word against it. But then, Unc never did say anything unless it was absolutely necessary. As soon as breakfast was over, they all went into the magician's big workshop, where the glass cat was lying before the mirror and the Patchwork Girl lay limp and lifeless upon the bench. "Now then," said Dr. Pip in a brisk tone, "we shall perform one of the greatest feats of magic possible to man, even in this marvelous land of Oz. In no other country would it be done at all. I think we ought to have a little music while the Patchwork Girl comes to life. It is pleasant to reflect that the first sounds her golden ears will hear will be delicious music." As he spoke, he went to a phonograph, which was screwed fast to a small table, and wound up the spring of the instrument and adjusted the big gold horn. "The music my servant will usually hear," remarked Margolette, "will be my orders to do her work. But I see no harm in allowing her to listen to this unseen band while she wakens to her first realization of life. My orders will beat the band afterwards." The phonograph was now playing a stirring march tune, and the magician unlocked his cabinet and took out the gold bottle containing the powder of life. They all bent over the bench on which the Patchwork Girl reclined. Unc Nucky and Margolette stood behind, near the windows, Ojo at one side and the magician in front, where he could have freedom to sprinkle the powder. The glass cat came near too, curious to watch the important scene. "All ready?" asked Dr. Pip. "All is ready," answered his wife. So the magician leaned over and shook from the bottle some grains of the wonderful powder, and they fell directly on the Patchwork Girl's head and arms. A terrible accident. "It will take a few minutes for this powder to do its work," remarked the magician, sprinkling the body up and down with much care. But suddenly the Patchwork Girl threw up one arm, which knocked the bottle of powder from the crooked man's hand and sent it flying across the room. Unc Nucky and Margolette were so startled that they both leapt backwards and bumped together, and Unc's head joggled the shelf above them and upset the bottle containing the liquid of petrification. The magician uttered such a wild cry that Ojo jumped away, and the Patchwork Girl sprang after him and clasped her stuffed arms around him in terror. The glass cat snarled and hid under the table, and so it was that when the powerful liquid of petrification was spilled, it fell only upon the wife of the magician and the uncle of Ojo. With these two, the charm worked promptly. They stood motionless and stiff as marble statues, in exactly the positions they were in when the liquid struck them. Ojo pushed the Patchwork Girl away and ran to Unc Nucky, filled with a terrible fear for the only friend and protector he had ever known. When he grasped Unc's hand, it was cold and hard. Even the long gray beard was solid marble. The crooked magician was dancing around the room in a frenzy of despair, calling upon his wife to forgive him, to speak to him, to come to life again. The Patchwork Girl, quickly recovered from her fright, now came nearer and looked from one to another of the people with deep interest. Then she looked at herself and laughed. Noticing the mirror, she stood before it and examined her extraordinary features with amazement. Her button eyes, pearl bead teeth, and puffy nose. Then, addressing her reflection in the mirror, she exclaimed, "Wee, but there's a gaudy dame. Makes a paint box blush with shame. Razzle-dazzle, fizzle-fazzle. Howdy-do, Miss What's-your-name?" She bowed, and the reflection bowed. Then she laughed again, long and merrily, and the glass cat crept out from under the table and said, "I don't blame you for laughing at yourself. Aren't you horrid?" "Horrid?" she replied. "Why, I'm thoroughly delightful. I'm an original, if you please, and therefore incomparable. Of all the cosmic, absurd, rare, and amusing creatures the world contains, I must be the supreme freak. Who but poor Margolette could have managed to invent such an unreasonable being as I? But I'm glad, awfully glad, that I'm just what I am and nothing else." "Be quiet, will you?" cried the frantic magician. "Be quiet and let me think. If I don't, I shall go mad." "Think ahead," said the Patchwork Girl, seating herself in a chair. "Think all you want to. I don't mind." "Gee, but I'm tired of playing that tune," called the phonograph, speaking through its horn in a brazen, scratchy voice. "If you don't mind, Pip, old boy, I'll cut it out and take a rest." The magician looked gloomily at the music machine. "What dreadful luck," he wailed despondently. The powder of life must have fallen on the phonograph. He went up to it and found that the gold bottle had contained the precious powder had dropped upon the stand and scattered its life-living grains over the machine. The phonograph was very much alive and began dancing a jig with the legs of the table to which it was attached, and this dance so annoyed Dr. Pip that he kicked the thing into a corner and pushed a bench against it to hold it quiet. "You were bad enough before," said the magician resentfully, "but a live phonograph is enough to drive every sane person in the land of Oz stark crazy." "No insults, please," answered the phonograph in a surly tone. "You did it, my boy. Don't blame me." "You bungled everything, Dr. Pip," added the glass cat contemptuously. "Excuse me," said the Patchwork Girl, jumping up to whirl merrily around the room. "I think," said Ojo, almost ready to cry through grief over Unc Nunkey's sad fate, "it must all be my fault in some way. I'm called Ojo the Unlucky, you know." "That's nonsense, kiddo," retorted the Patchwork Girl cheerfully. "No one can be unlucky who has the intelligence to direct his own actions. The unlucky ones are those who beg for a chance to think, like poor Dr. Pip here. What's the roll about anyway, Mr. Magic Maker?" "The liquid of petrification has accidentally fallen upon my dear wife and Unc Nunkey and turned them into marble," he sadly replied. "Well, why don't you sprinkle some of that powder on them and bring them to life again?" asked the Patchwork Girl. The magician gave a jump. "Why hadn't I thought of that?" he joyfully cried, and grabbed up the golden bottle, with which he ran to Margolette. Said the Patchwork Girl, "Higgledy-piggledy-dee, what fools magicians be. His head's so thick he can't think quick, so he takes advice from me." Standing upon the bench, for he was so crooked he could not reach the top of his wife's head in any other way, Dr. Pip began shaking the bottle, but not a grain of powder came out. He pulled off the cover, glanced within, and then threw the bottle from him with a wail of despair. "Gone. Every bit gone," he cried. "Wasted on that miserable phonograph when it might have saved my dear wife." Then the magician bowed his head on his crooked arms and began to cry. Ojo was sorry for him. He went up to the sorrowful man and said softly, "You can make more powder of life, Dr. Pip." "Yes, but it will take me 6 years, 6 long, weary years of stirring 4 kettles with both hands and both feet," was the agonizing reply. 6 years, while poor Margaret stands watching me as a marble image." "Can't anything else be done?" asked the Patchwork Girl. The magician shook his head. Then he seemed to remember something and looked up. "There is one other component that would destroy the magic spell of the liquid of petrification and restore my wife and Unc Nunkey to life," said he. "It may be hard to find the things I need to make this magic compound, but if they were found, I could do in an instant what will otherwise take 6 long, weary years of stirring kettles with both my hands and both feet." "All right, let's find the things then," suggested the Patchwork Girl. "That seems a lot more sensible than those stirring times with the kettles." "That's the idea, Scraps," said the Glass Cat approvingly. "I'm glad to find you have decent brains. Mine are exceptionally good. You can see 'em work. They're pink." "Scraps?" repeated the girl. "Did you call me Scraps? Is that my name?" I believe my poor wife had intended to name you Angeline," said the magician. "But I like Scraps best," she replied with a laugh. "It fits me better, for my patchwork is all scraps and nothing else. Thank you for naming me, Miss Cat. Have you any name of your own?" "I have a foolish name that Margolette once gave me, but which is quite undignified for one of my importance," answered the cat. "She called me Bungle." "Yes," sighed the magician. "You were a sad bungle, taken all in all. I was wrong to make you as I did, for a more useless, conceited, and brittle thing there never existed." "I'm not so brittle as you think," retorted the cat. "I've been alive a good many years, for Dr. Pip experimented on me with the first magic powder of life he ever made, and so far I've never broken or cracked or chipped any part of me." "You seem to have a chip on your shoulder," laughed the Patchwork Girl, and the cat went to the mirror to see. "Tell me," pleaded Ojo, speaking to the crooked magician, "what must we find to make the component that will save Unc Nunkey?" "First," was the reply, "I must have a 6-leaved clover. That can only be found in the green country around the Emerald City, and 6-leaved clovers are very scarce even there." "I'll find it for you," promised Ojo. "The next thing," continued the magician, "is the left wing of a yellow butterfly. That color can only be found in the yellow country of the Winkies, west of the Emerald City." "I'll find it," declared Ojo. "Is that all?" "Oh no. I'll get my book of recipes and see what comes next." Saying this, the magician unlocked a drawer of his cabinet and drew out a small book covered with blue leather. Looking through the pages, he found the recipe he wanted and said, "I must have a gill of water from a dark well." "What kind of a well is that, sir?" asked the boy. "One where the light of day never penetrates. The water must be put in a gold bottle and brought to me without any light ever reaching it." I'll get the water from the dark well," said Ojo. "Then I must have 3 hairs from the tip of a wuzzy's tail and a drop of oil from a live man's body." Ojo looked grave at this. "What is a woozy, please?" he inquired. "Some sort of animal. I've never seen one, so I can't describe it," replied the magician. "If I can find a woozy, I'll get the hairs from its tail," said Ojo. "But is there ever any oil in a man's body?" The magician looked in the book again to make sure. "That's what the recipe calls for," he replied. "And of course we must get everything that is called for, or the charm won't work. The book doesn't say blood, it says oil. And there must be oil somewhere in a live man's body, or the book wouldn't ask for it." "All right," replied Ojo, trying not to feel discouraged. "I'll try to find it." The magician looked at the little munchkin boy in a doubtful way and said, "All this will mean a long journey for you, perhaps several long journeys, for you must search through several of the different countries of Oz in order to get the things I need." "I know it, sir, but I must do my best to save Unc Nunky, and also my poor wife, Margolette. If you save one, you will save the other, for both stand there together, and the same compound will restore them both to life. Do the best you can, Ojo, and while you are gone, I shall begin the 6 years' job of making a new batch of the powder of life. Then, if you should unluckily fail to secure any one of the things needed, I will have lost no time. But if you succeed, you must return here as quickly as you can, and that will save me much tiresome stirring of 4 kettles with both feet and both hands." "I will start on my journey at once, sir," said the boy. "And I will go with you," declared the Patchwork Girl. "No, no," exclaimed the magician. "You have no right to leave this house. You are only a servant and have not been discharged." Scraps, who had been dancing up and down the room, stopped and looked at him. "What is a servant?" she asked. "One who serves. A sort of slave," he explained. "Very well," said the Patchwork Girl. "I'm going to serve you and your wife by helping Ojo find the things you need. You need a lot, you know, such as are not easily found." "It is true," sighed Dr. Pipt. "I am well aware that Ojo has undertaken a serious task." Scraps laughed and resumed her dance. She said, "Here's a job for a boy of brains, a drop of oil from a live man's veins, a 6-leaved clover, three nice hairs, from a woozle's tail, the book declares, are needed for the magic spell, and water from a pitch-dark well. The yellow wing of a butterfly to find Ojo also try, and if he gets them with that harm, Doc Pip will make the magic charm. But if he doesn't get 'em, Unc will always stand a marble chunk." The magician looked at her thoughtfully. "Poor Margolette must have given you some of the quality of posy by mistake," he said. "And if that is true, I didn't make a very good article when I prepared it, or else you got an overdose or an underdose. However, I believe I shall let you go with Ojo, for my poor wife will not need your services until she is restored to life. Also, I think you may be able to help the boy, for your head seems to contain some thoughts I did not expect to find in it. But be very careful of yourself, for your souvenir of my dear Margolette. Try not to get ripped, or your stuffing may fall out. One of your eyes seems loose, and you may have to sew it on tighter. If you talk too much, you'll wear out your scarlet plush tongue, which ought to have been hemmed on the edges. And remember, you belong to me and must return here as soon as your mission is accomplished." "I'm going with Scraps and Ojo," announced the Glass Cat. "You can't," said the magician. "Why not?" "You'd get broken in no time, and you couldn't be a bit of use to the boy or the Patchwork Girl." "I beg to differ with you," returned the cat in a haughty tone. 3 heads are better than 2, and my pink brains are beautiful. You can see 'em work." "Well, go along," said the magician irritably. "You're only an annoyance anyhow, and I'm glad to get rid of you." "Thank you for nothing, then," answered the cat stiffly. Dr. Pip took a small basket from a cupboard and packed several things in it. Then he handed it to Ojo. "Here is some food and a bundle of charms," he said. "It is all I can give you, but I am sure you will find friends on your journey who will assist you in your search. Take care of the Patchwork Girl and bring her safely back, for she ought to prove useful to my wife. As for the Glass Cat, properly named Bungle, if she bothers you, I now give you my permission to break her in 2, for she is not respectful and does not obey me. I made a mistake in giving her the pink brains, you see." Then Ojo went to Unc Nunky and kissed the old man's marble face very tenderly. "I'm going to try to save you, Unc," he said, just as if the marble image could hear him. And then he shook the crooked hand of the crooked magician, who was already busy hanging the 4 kettles in the fireplace, and picked up his basket, left the house. The Patchwork Girl followed them, and after them came the Glass Cat. I am going to take a quick break just to check on my dryer and take the clothes out of it. It should not be very long, and then I will be back and we will continue on with our story. So I will be right back. Alright, I am back and we will continue with our story. The journey. Ojo had never traveled before, and so he only knew the path down the mountainside led into the open Munchkin country, where large numbers of people dwelt. Scraps was quite new and not supposed to know anything of the land of Oz. While the glass cat admitted she had never wandered very far away from the magician's house. There was only one path before them at the beginning, so they could not miss their way, and for the time they walked through the thick forest. And, god damn it, and I just accidentally moved to the end of the book. Brilliant. So how you all doing? Hello, Drop Bear. How are you? Yes, it is story time. I need an emote like that. Okay, I found my page. Thank goodness. Alright, on to reading once again, and let me change my screen. Because it's not story time without the fire anyway, so maybe that's why it messed me up with my pages. It knew I didn't have the fireplace going. Alright, we will begin this chapter again with our proper music, with our fireplace on the beach. Ojo had never traveled before, and so he only knew the path down the mountainside led into the open Munchkin country, where large numbers of people dwelt. Scraps was quite new and not supposed to know anything of the land of Oz, while the glass cat admitted that she had never wandered very far away from the magician's home. There was only one path before them at the beginning, so they could not miss their way, and for a time they walked through the thick forest in silent thought, each one impressed with the importance of the adventure they had undertaken. Suddenly, the Patchwork Girl laughed. It was funny to see her laugh, because her cheeks wrinkled up, her nose tipped, her silver button eyes twinkled, and her mouth curled at the corners in a comical way. "Has something pleased you?" asked Ojo, who was feeling solemn and joyless, through thinking upon his uncle's sad fate. "Yes," she answered. "Your world pleases me, for it's a queer world, and life in it is queerer still. Here I am, made from an old bedquilt and intended to be a slave to Margolette, rendered free as air by an accident that none of you could foresee. I am enjoying life and seeing the world, while the woman who made me is standing helpless as a block of wood. If that isn't funny enough to laugh at, I don't know what is." "You're not seeing much of the world yet, my poor innocent Scraps," remarked the cat. "The world doesn't consist wholly of the trees that are on all sides of us." "But they're part of it, and aren't they pretty trees?" remarked Scraps, bobbing her head until her brown yarn curls fluttered in the breeze. "Growing between them I can see lovely ferns and wildflowers and soft green mosses. If the rest of your world is half as beautiful, I shall be glad I'm alive." "I don't know what the rest of the world is like, I'm sure," said the cat, "but I mean to find out." "I have never been out of the forest," Ojo added, "but to me the trees are gloomy and sad, and the wildflowers seem lonesome. It must be nicer where there are no trees and there is room for lots of people to live together." "I wonder if any of the people we meet shall be as splendid as I am," said the Patchwork Girl. "All I have seen so far have pale, colorless skin and clothes as blue as the country they live in, while I am of many gorgeous colors, face and body and clothes. That is why I am bright and contented, Ojo, while you are blue and sad." "I think I made a mistake in giving you so many sorts of brains," observed the boy. "Perhaps, as the magician said, you have had an overdose, and they may not agree with you." "What had you to do with my brains?" asked Strap. "A lot," replied Ojo. "Old Margolette meant to give you only a few, just enough to keep you going. But when she wasn't looking, I added a good many more, of the best kinds I could find in the magician's cupboard." "Thanks," said the girl, dancing along the path ahead of Ojo, and then dancing back to his side. "If a few brains are good, many brains must be better." "But they ought to be evenly balanced," said the boy, "and I had no time to be careful. From the way you're acting, I guess the dose was badly mixed." "Scraps hasn't enough brains to hurt her, so don't worry," remarked the cat, which was trotting along in a very dainty and graceful manner. "The only brains worth considering are mine, which are pink. You can see 'em work." After walking a long time, they came to a little brook that trickled along the path, and here Ojo sat down to rest and eat something from his basket. He found that the magician had given him part of a loaf of bread and a slice of cheese. He broke off some of the bread and was surprised to find the loaf just as large as it was before. It was the same way with the cheese. However much he broke off from the slice, it remained exactly the same. "Ah," he said, nodding wisely. "That's magic. Dr. Pip has enchanted the bread and the cheese so it will last me all through my journey, however much I eat." "Why do you put those things into your mouth?" asked Scraps, gazing at him in astonishment. "Do you need more stuffing? Then why don't you use cotton, such as I am stuffed with?" "I don't need that kind," said Ojo. "But a mouth is to talk with, isn't it?" "It is also to eat with," replied the boy. "If I didn't put food into my mouth and eat it, I would get hungry and starve." "Oh, I didn't know that," she said. "Give me some." Ojo handed her a bit of the bread and she put it in her mouth. "What's next?" she asked, scarcely able to speak. "Chew it and swallow it," said the boy. Scraps tried that. Her pearl teeth were unable to chew the bread, and beyond her mouth there was no opening. Being unable to swallow, she threw away the bread and laughed. "I must get hungry and starve, for I can't eat," she said. "Neither can I," announced the cat, "but I'm not fool enough to try. Can't you understand that you and I are superior people and not made like these poor humans?" "Why should I understand that or anything else?" asked the girl. "Don't bother my head by asking conundrums, I beg of you. Just let me discover myself in my own way." With this she began amusing herself by leaping across the brooks and back again. "Be careful or you fall in the water," warned Ojo. "Never mind." "You'd better. If you get wet, you'll be soggy and can't walk. Your colors might run too," he said. "Don't my colors run wherever I run?" she asked. "Not in the way I mean. If you were to get wet, the reds and greens and yellows and purples of your patches might run into each other and become just a blur. No color at all, you know." "Then," said the Patchwork Girl, "I'll be careful. For if I spoiled my splendid colors, I would cease to be beautiful." "Pah!" sneered the Glass Cat. "Such colors are not beautiful. They're ugly and in bad taste. Please notice that my body has no color at all. I am transparent except for my exquisite red heart and my lovely pink brains. You can see 'em work." "Shoo, shoo, shoo," cried Scraps, dancing around and laughing. "And your horrid green eyes, Miss Bungle. You can't see your eyes, but we can, and I notice you're very proud of what little color you have. Shoo, Miss Bungle, shoo, shoo. If you were all colors and many colors as I am, you'd be too stuck up for anything." She leapt over the cat and back again, and the startled Bungle crept close to a tree to escape her. This made Scraps laugh more heartily than ever, and she said, "Whoop-de-doodle-doo, the cat has lost her shoe. Her tootsie's bare, but she don't care, so what's the odds to you?" "Dear me, Ojo," said the cat, "don't you think the creature is a little bit crazy?" "It may be," he answered with a puzzled look. "If she continues her insults, I'll scratch off her suspender-button eyes," declared the cat. "Don't quarrel, please," pleaded the boy, rising to resume the journey. "Let us be good comrades and as happy and cheerful as possible, for we are likely to meet with plenty of trouble on our way." It was nearly sundown when they came to the edge of a forest and saw spread out before them a delightful landscape. There were broad blue fields stretching for miles over the valley, which was dotted everywhere with pretty blue domed houses, none of which, however, was very near to the place where they stood. Just at the point where the path left the forest stood a tiny house covered with leaves from the trees, and before this stood a Munchkin man with an axe in his hand. He seemed very much surprised when Ojo and Scraps and the Glass Cat came out of the woods, but as the Patchwork Girl approached nearer, he sat down upon a bench and laughed so hard that he could not speak for a long time. This man was a woodchopper and lived all alone in the little house. He had bushy white whiskers and merry blue eyes, and his blue clothes were quite old and warm. "Mercy me!" exclaimed the woodchopper, when at last he could stop laughing. "Who would think such a funny harlequin lived in the land of Oz? Where did you come from, Crazy Quilt?" "Do you mean me?" asked the Patchwork Girl. "Of course," he replied. "You misjudge my ancestry. I'm not a Crazy Quilt. I'm Patchwork," she said. "There's no difference," he replied, beginning to laugh again. "When my old grandmother sews such things together, she calls it a crazy quilt, but I never thought such a jumble should come to life." "It was the magic powder that did it," explained Ojo. "Oh, then you have come from the crooked magician on the mountain. I might have known it, well, I declare, here's a glass cat. But the magician will get in trouble for this. It's against the law for anyone to work magic except Glinda the Good and the Royal Wizard of Oz. If you people, or things, or glass spectacles, or crazy quilts, or whatever you are, go near the Emerald City, you'll be arrested." We're going there anyhow, declared Scraps, sitting upon the bench and swinging her stuffed legs. If any of us take a rest, we'll be arrested sure, and get no restitution, 'cause the rest we must endure. I see, said the woodchopper, nodding. You're as crazy as the crazy quilt you're made of. She really is crazy, remarked the glass cat, but that isn't to be wondered at when you remember how many different things she's made of. For my part, I'm made of pure glass, except my jewel heart and my pretty pink brains. Did you notice my brains, stranger? You can see 'em work. So I can, replied the woodchopper, but I can't see that they accomplish much. A glass cat is a useless sort of thing, but a patchwork girl is really useful. She makes me laugh, and laughter is the best thing in life. There was once a woodchopper, a friend of mine, who was made all of tin, and I used to laugh every time I saw him. A tin woodchopper, said Ojo. That is strange. My friend wasn't always tin, said the man, but he was careless with his axe and used to chop himself very badly. Whenever he lost an arm or a leg, he had it replaced with tin, so after a while he was all tin. And could he chop wood then? Asked the boy. He could if he didn't rest his tin joints. But one day he met Dorothy in the forest and went with her to the Emerald City, where he made his fortune. He is now one of the favorites of Princess Ozma, and she has made him the Emperor of the Winkies, the country where all is yellow. Who is Dorothy? Inquired the Patchwork Girl. A little maid who used to live in Kansas, but is now a princess of Oz. She's Ozma's best friend, they say, and lives with her in the royal palace. Is Dorothy made of tin? Inquired Ojo. Is she patchwork like me? Inquired Scraps. No, said the man. Dorothy is flesh, just as I am. I know of only one tin person, and that is Nick Chopper, the Tin Woodsman. And there will never be but one Patchwork Girl, for any magician that sees you will refuse to make another one like you. I suppose we shall see the Tin Woodsman, for we are going to the country of the Winkies, said the boy. What for? Asked the woodchopper. To get the left wing of a yellow butterfly. It is a long journey, declared the man, and you will go through lonely parts of Oz and cross rivers and traverse dark forests before you get there. Suits me all right, said Scraps. I'll get a chance to see the country. You're crazy, girl. Better crawl into a rag bag and hide there, or give yourself to some little girl to play with. Those who travel are likely to meet trouble, and that's why I stay at home. The woodchopper then invited them all to stay the night at his little hut, but they were anxious to get on, and so left him and continued along the path, which was broader now, and more distinct. They expected to reach some other houses before it grew dark, but the twilight was brief, and Ojo soon began to fear they had made a mistake in leaving the woodchopper. I can scarcely see the path, he said at last. Can you see it, Scraps? No, replied the Patchwork Girl, who was holding fast to the boy's arm so he could guide her. I can see, declared the Glass Cat. My eyes are better than yours, and my pink brains— Never mind your pink brains, please, said Ojo hastily. Just run ahead and show us the way. Wait a minute and I'll tie a string to you, for then you can lead us. He got a string from his pocket and tied it around the Glass Cat's neck, and after that the creature guided them along the path. They had proceeded in this way for over an hour when a twinkling blue light appeared ahead of them. Good, there's a house at last, cried Ojo. When we reach it, the good people will surely welcome us and give us a night's lodging. But however far they walked, the light seemed to get no nearer, so by and by the cat stopped short, saying, I think the light is traveling too, and we shall never be able to catch up with it. But here is a house by the roadside, so why go further? Where is the house, Bungle? Just here beside us, Scraps. Ojo was now able to see a small house near the pathway. It was dark and silent, but the boy was tired and wanted to rest, so he went up to the door and knocked. Who is there? Cried a voice from within. I am Ojo the Unlucky, and with me are Miss Scraps Patchwork and the Glass Cat, he replied. What do you want? Asked the voice. A place to sleep, said Ojo. Come in then, but don't make any noise, and you must go directly to bed, returned the voice. Ojo unlatched the door and entered. It was very dark inside, and he could see nothing at all. But the cat exclaimed, Why, there's no one here. There must be, said the boy. Someone spoke to me. I can see everything in the room, replied the cat, and no one is present but ourselves. But here are 3 beds, all made up, so we may as well go to sleep. What is sleep? Inquired the Patchwork Girl. It's what you do when you go to bed, said Ojo. But why do you go to bed? Persisted the Patchwork Girl. Here, you are making altogether too much noise, cried the voice they had heard before. Keep quiet, strangers, and go to bed. The cat, which could see in the dark, looked sharply around for the owner of the voice, but could discover no one, although the voice had seemed close beside them. She arched her back a little and seemed afraid. Then she whispered to Ojo, "Come," and led him to a bed. With his hands, the boy felt of the bed and found it was big and soft, with feathery pillows and plenty of blankets. So he took off his shoes and hat and crept into the bed. Then the cat led Scraps to another bed, and the Patchwork Girl was puzzled to know what to do with it. "Lie down and keep quiet," whispered the cat warningly. "Can't I sing?" asked Scraps. "No." "Can't I whistle?" asked Scraps. "No." "Can't I dance till morning if I want to?" asked Scraps. "You must keep quiet," said the cat in a soft voice. "I don't want to," replied the Patchwork Girl, speaking as loudly as usual. "What right have you to order me around? If I want to talk or yell or whistle—" But before she could say anything more, an unseen hand seized her firmly and threw her out of the door, which closed behind her with a sharp slam. She found herself bumping and rolling in the road, and when she got up and tried to open the door of the house again, she found it locked. "What has happened to Scraps?" asked Ojo. "Never mind. Let's go to sleep, or something will happen to us," answered the glass cat. So Ojo snuggled down in his bed and fell asleep, and he was so tired that he never awakened until broad daylight. Hey, Ribs and Sage. Thank you for the host, Sage. Hope you're having a good lurk. The Troublesome Phonograph. When the boy opened his eyes next morning, he looked carefully around the room. These small Munchkin houses seldom had more than one room in them. That in which Ojo now found himself had 3 beds, set all in a row on one side of it. The glass cat lay asleep on one bed. Ojo was in the second, and the third was nearly made up and smooth for the day. On the other side of the room was a round table on which breakfast was already placed, smoking hot. Only one chair was drawn up to the table, where a place was set for one person. No one seemed to be in the room except the boy and Bungle. Ojo got up and put on his shoes. Finding a toilet stand at the head of his bed, he washed his face and hands and brushed his hair. Then he went to the table and said, "I wonder if this is my breakfast." "Eat it," commanded a voice at his side, so near that Ojo jumped. But no person could be seen. He was hungry, and the breakfast looked good, so he sat down and ate all he wanted. Then, rising, he took his hat and wakened the glass cat. "Come on, Bungle," he said, "we must go." He cast another glance around the room, and speaking to the air, he said, "Whoever lives here has been kind to me, and I'm much obliged." There was no answer, so he took his basket and went out the door, the cat following him. In the middle of the path sat the Patchwork Girl, playing with pebbles she had picked up. "Oh, there you are," she exclaimed cheerfully. "I thought you were never coming out. It's been daylight a long time." "What did you do all night?" asked the boy. "Sat here and watched the stars and the moon," she replied. "They're interesting. I never saw them before, you know." "Of course not," said Ojo. "You were crazy to act so badly and get thrown outdoors," remarked Bungle as they renewed their journey. "That's all right," said Scraps. "If I hadn't been thrown out, I wouldn't have seen the stars, nor the big gray wolf." "What wolf?" inquired Ojo. "The one that came to the door of the house 3 times during the night." "I don't see why that should be," said the boy thoughtfully. "There's plenty to eat in that house, for I had a fine breakfast and I slept in a nice bed." "Don't you feel tired?" asked the Patchwork Girl, noticing that the boy yawned. "Why, yes, I'm as tired as I was last night, and yet I slept very well." "And aren't you hungry?" "It's strange," replied Ojo. "I had a good breakfast, and yet I think now I'll eat some of my cheese and crackers." Scraps danced up and down the path. Then she sang, "Kizzle cackle core, the wolf is at the door. There's nothing to eat but a bone without meat, and a bill from the grocery store." "What does that mean?" asked Ojo. "Don't ask me," replied Scraps. "I say what comes into my head. But of course I know nothing of a grocery store or bones without meat or very much else." "No," said the cat. "She's stark, staring, raving crazy, and her brains can't be pink for they don't work properly." "Bother the brains," cried Scrap. "Who cares for 'em anyhow? Have you noticed how beautiful my patches are in this sunlight?" Just then they heard a sound as of footsteps pattering along the path behind them, and all 3 turned to see what was coming. To their astonishment, they beheld a small round table running as fast as its 4 spindle legs could carry it, and to the top was screwed fast a phonograph with a big gold horn. "Hold on," shouted the phonograph. "Wait for me." "Goodness me, it's that magic thing which the crooked magician scattered the powder of life over," said Ojo. "So it is," returned Bungle in a grumpy tone of voice. And then, as the phonograph overtook them, the Glass Cat added sternly, "What are you doing here, anyhow?" "I've run away," said the music thing. "After you left, old Dr. Pipt and I had a dreadful quarrel, and he threatened to smash me to pieces if I didn't keep quiet. Of course I wouldn't do that, because a talking machine is supposed to talk and make a noise, and sometimes music. So I slipped out of the house while the magician was stirring his 4 kettles, and I've been running after you all night. Now that I've found such pleasant company, I can talk and play tunes all I want." Ojo was greatly annoyed by this unwelcome addition to their party. At first he did not know what to say to the newcomer, but a little thought decided him not to make friends. "We are traveling on important business," he declared, "and you'll excuse me if I say we can't be bothered." "How very impolite," exclaimed the phonograph. "I'm sorry, but it's true," said the boy. "You'll have to go somewhere else." "That is a very unkind treatment, I must say," whined the phonograph in an injured tone. "Everyone seems to hate me, and yet I was intended to amuse people." "It isn't you we hate, especially," observed the Glass Cat. "It's your dreadful music. When I lived in the same room with you, I was much annoyed by your squeaky horn. It growls and grumbles and clicks and scratches so it spoils the music, and your machinery rumbles so that the racket drowns every tune you attempt." "That isn't my fault. It's the fault of my records." "I must admit that I haven't a clear record," answered the machine. "Just the same, you'll have to go away," said Ojo. "Wait a minute," cried Scraps. "This music thing interests me. I remember to have heard music when I first came to life, and I would like to hear it again. What is your name, my poor abused phonograph?" "Victor Columbia Edison," it answered. "Well, I shall call you Vic for short," said the Patchwork Girl. "Go ahead and play something." "It'll drive you crazy," warned the cat. "I'm crazy now, according to your statement. Loosen up and reel out the music, Vic." "The only record I have with me," exclaimed the phonograph, "is one the magician attached just before we had our quarrel. It's a highly classical composition." "A what?" inquired Scraps. "It is classical music, and is considered the best and most puzzling ever manufactured. You're supposed to like it, whether you do or not. And if you don't, the proper thing is to look as if you did. Understand?" "Not in the least," said Scraps. "Then listen." At once the machine began to play, and in a few minutes Ojo put his hands to his ears to shut out the sounds, and the cat snarled, and Scraps began to laugh. "Cut it out, Vic," she said. "That's enough." But the phonograph continued playing the dreary tune, so Ojo seized the crank, jerked it free, and threw it into the road. However, the moment the crank struck the ground, it bounded back to the machine and began winding it up. And still the music played. "Let's run," cried Scraps, and they all started and ran down the path as fast as they could. But the phonograph was right behind them and could play and run at the same time. It called out reproachfully, "What's the matter? Don't you love classical music?" "No, Vic," said Scraps, halting. "We will passicle the classical and preserve what joy we have left. I haven't any nerves, thank goodness, but your music makes my cotton shrink." "Then turn over my record. There's a ragtime tune on the other side," said the machine. "What's ragtime?" "The opposite of classical." "All right," said Scraps, and turned over the record. The phonograph now began to play a jerky stumble of sounds which proved so bewildering that after a moment Scraps stuffed her patchwork apron into the golden horn and cried, "Stop! Stop! That's the other extreme. It's extremely bad." Muffled as it was, the phonograph played on. "If you don't shut off that music, I'll smash your record," threatened Ojo. The music stopped at that, and the machine turned its horn from one to another and said with great indignation, "What's the matter now? Is it possible you can't appreciate ragtime?" "Scraps ought to, being rags herself," said the cat, "but I simply can't stand it. It makes my whiskers curl." "It is indeed dreadful," exclaimed Ojo with a shudder. "It's enough to drive a crazy lady mad," murmured the Patchwork Girl. "I'll tell you what, Vic," she added as she smoothed out her apron and put it on again. "For some reason or other, you've missed your guess. You're not a concert. You're a nuisance." "Music hath charms to soothe the savage beast," asserted the phonograph sadly. "Then we're not savages. I advise you to go home and beg the magician's pardon." "Never. He'd smash me." "Then what shall we do if you stay here?" Ojo declared. "Run along, Vic, and bother someone else," advised Scraps. "Find someone who is real wicked and stay with him till he repents. In that way you can do some good in the world." The music thing turned silently away and trotted down a side path towards a distant Munchkin village. "Is that the way we go?" asked Bungle anxiously. "No," said Ojo. "I think we shall keep straight ahead, for this path is the widest and best. When we come to some house, we will inquire the way to the Emerald City." It does seem to be like it was a ghost house. It was a ghost house eating ghost food. It was obviously a hallucination. A hallucination made by a wolf, apparently. Oh God. This next chapter is The Foolish Owl and the Wise Donkey. I think we know what's coming. And it's not pretty. On they went, and half an hour's steady walking brought them to a house somewhat better than the two they had already passed. It stood close to the roadside, and over the door was a sign that read, "Miss Foolish Owl and Mr. Wise Donkey, Public Advisors." When Ojo read the sign aloud, Scraps said laughingly, "Well, here is a place to get all the advice we want, maybe more than we need. Let's go in." The boy knocked at the door. "Come in," called a deep bass voice. So they opened the door and entered the house, where a little light brown donkey, dressed in a blue apron and a blue cap, was engaged in dusting the furniture with a blue cloth. On a shelf over the window sat a great blue owl with a blue sunbonnet on her head, blinking her big round eyes at the visitors. "Good morning," said the donkey in his deep voice, which seemed bigger than he was. "Did you come to us for advice?" "Why, we came anyhow," replied Scraps. "And now we are here, we may as well have some advice. It's free, isn't it?" "Certainly," said the donkey. "Advice doesn't cost anything, unless you follow it. Permit me to say, by the way, that you are the queerest lot of travelers that ever came to my shop. Judging you merely by appearances, I think you'd better talk to the foolish owl yonder." They turned to look at the bird, which fluttered its wings and stared back at them with its big eyes. "Hoo-tee, toot-tee, toot," cried the owl. "Fiddle-cum-foo, howdy-do, fiddle-cum tiddle-dum, troo-la-la-loo." "It beats your poetry, Scraps," said Ojo. "This is nonsense," declared the glass cat. "But it's good advice for the foolish," said the donkey admiringly. "Listen to my partner, and you can't go wrong," said the owl in a grumbling voice. "Patchwork Girl has come to life. No one's sweetheart, no one's wife. Lacking sense and loving fun, she'll be snubbed by everyone." Quite a compliment, I declare," exclaimed the donkey, turning back to look at Scraps. "You are certainly a wonder, my dear, and I fancy you'd make a splendid pincushion. If you belonged to me, I'd wear smoked glasses when I looked at you." "Why?" asked the Patchwork Girl. "Because you're so gay and gaudy." "It is my beauty that dazzles you," she asserted. "You Munchkin people all strut around in your stupid blue color, while You are wrong in calling me a Munchkin," interrupted the donkey. "For I was born in the land of Mo, and came to visit the land of Oz on the day it was shut off from the rest of the world. So here I am obliged to stay, and I confess it is a very pleasant country to live in." "Hoot-tee-toot," cried the owl. "Ojo's searching for a charm, 'cause Uncle Nunkey's come to harm. Charms are scarce, they're hard to get. Ojo's got a job, you bet." "Is he also very foolish?" asked the boy. "Extremely so," replied the donkey. "Notice what vulgar expressions she uses. But I admire the owl for the reason that she is positively foolish. Owls are supposed to be so very wise, generally, that a foolish one is unusual, and you perhaps know that anything or anyone unusual is sure to be interesting to the wise." The owl flapped its wings again, muttering these words. "It's hard to be a glassy cat. No cat can be more hard than that. She's so transparent, every act is clear to us, and that's a fact." "Have you noticed my pink brains?" inquired Bungle proudly. "You can see 'em work." "Not in the daytime," said the donkey. "She can't see very well by day, poor thing. But her advice is excellent. I advise you all to follow it." The owl hasn't given us any advice as yet, the boy declared. No? Then what do you call all those sweet poems? Just foolishness, replied Ojo. Scraps does the same thing. Foolishness? Of course, to be sure. The foolish owl must be foolish, or she wouldn't be the foolish owl. You're very complimentary to my partner, indeed, asserted the donkey, rubbing his front hoofs together as if highly pleased. The sign says that you are wise, replied Scraps to the donkey. I wish you would prove it. With great pleasure, returned the beast. Put me to the test, my dear Patches, and I'll prove my wisdom in the wink of an eye. What is the best way to get to the Emerald City? Asked Ojo. Walk, said the donkey. I know, but what road shall I take? Was the boy's next question. The road of yellow bricks, of course. It leads directly to the Emerald City. And how shall we find the road of yellow bricks? By keeping along the path you have been following. You'll come to the yellow bricks pretty soon, and you'll know them when you see them because they're the only yellow thing in the blue country. Thank you, said the boy. At last you've told me something. Is that the extent of your wisdom? Asked Scraps. No, replied the donkey. I know many other things, but they wouldn't interest you. So I'll give you a last word of advice. Move on, for the sooner you do that, the sooner you'll get to the Emerald City of Oz. Ooty-doo-ty-doo-ty-doo, screeched the owl. Off you go, fast or slow. Where you're going, you don't know. Patches, Bungle, Munchkin lad, facing fortunes good and bad, meeting dangers grave and sad, sometimes worried, sometimes glad. Where you're going, you don't know. Nor do I, but off you go. Sounds like a hint to me, said the Patchwork Girl. Then let's take it and go, replied Ojo. They said goodbye to the wise donkey and the foolish owl and at once resumed their journey. They meet the Woozy. There seem to be very few houses around here after all, remarked Ojo after they had walked for a time in silence. Never mind, said Scraps. We are not looking for houses, but rather the road of yellow bricks. Wouldn't it be funny to run across something yellow in this dismal blue country? There are worse colors than yellow in this country, asserted the glass cat in a spiteful tone. Oh, do you mean the pink pebbles you call your brains, and your red heart and green eyes? Asked the Patchwork Girl. No, I mean you, if you must know it, growled the cat. You're jealous, laughed Scraps. You'd give your whiskers for a lovely variegated complexion like mine. I wouldn't, retorted the cat. I'm the clearest complexion in the world, and I don't employ a beauty doctor either. I see you don't, said Scraps. Please don't quarrel, begged Ojo. This is an important journey, and quarreling makes me discouraged. To be brave, one must be cheerful, so I hope you will be as good-tempered as possible. They had traveled some distance when suddenly they faced a high fence which barred any further progress straight ahead. It ran directly across the road and enclosed a small forest of tall trees, set close together. When the group of adventurers peered through the bars of the fence, they thought this forest looked more gloomy and forbidding than any they had ever seen before. They soon discovered that the path they had been following now made a bend and passed around the enclosure, but what made Ojo stop and look thoughtful was a sign painted on the fence which read, Beware of the Woozy. That means, he said, that there's a Woozy inside that fence, and the Woozy must be a dangerous animal, or they wouldn't tell people to beware of it. Let's keep out, then, replied Scraps. The path is outside the fence, and Mr. Woozy may have all his little forest to himself for all we care. But one of our errands is to find a Woozy, Ojo explained. The magician wants me to get 3 hairs from the end of a Woozy's tail. Let's go out and find some other Woozy, suggested the cat. This one is ugly and dangerous, so they wouldn't cage him up. Perhaps we shall find another that is tame and gentle. Perhaps there isn't any other at all, answered Ojo. The sign doesn't say, Beware a Woozy. It says, Beware the Woozy, which may mean there's only one in all the land of Oz. Then, said Scraps, suppose we go in and find him. Very likely, if we ask him politely to let us pull 3 hairs out of the tip of his tail, he won't hurt us. It would hurt him, I'm sure, and that would make him cross, said the cat. You needn't worry, Bungle, remarked the Patchwork Girl, for if there is danger, you can climb a tree. Ojo and I are not afraid, are we, Ojo? I am a little, the boy admitted. But this danger must be faced if we intend to save poor Unc Monkey. How shall we get over the fence? Climb, answered Scraps, and at once she began climbing up the rows of bars. Ojo followed and found it more easy than he had expected. When they got to the top of the fence, they began to get down on the other side and soon were in the forest. The glass cat, being small, crept between the lower bars and joined them. Here there was no path of any sort, so they entered the woods, and the boy leading the way, and wandered through the trees until they were nearly in the center of the forest. They now came upon a clear space in which stood a rocky cave. So far they had met no living creature, but when Ojo saw the cave, he knew it must be the den of the woozy. It is hard to face any savage beast without a sinking of the heart, but still more terrifying is it to face an unknown beast, which you have never seen even a picture of. So there is little wonder that the pulses of the Munchkin boy beat fast as he and his companion stood facing the cave. The opening was perfectly square, and was big enough to admit a goat. "I guess the woozy is asleep," said Scraps. "Shall I throw in a stone to waken him?" "No, please don't," answered Ojo, his voice trembling a little. "I'm in no hurry." But he had not long to wait, for the woozy heard the sound of voices and came trotting out of his cave. As this is the only woozy that has ever lived, either in the land of Oz or out of it, I must describe it to you. The creature was all squares and flat surfaces and edges. Its head was an exact square, like one of the building blocks a child plays with. Therefore it had no ears, but heard sounds through two openings in the upper corners. Its nose, being in the center of the square surface, was flat, while the mouth was formed by the opening of the lower edge of the block. The body of the woozy was much larger than its head, but was likewise block-shaped, being twice as long as it was wide and high. The tail was square and stubby and perfectly straight, and the forelegs were made in the same way, each being four-sided. The animal was covered with a thick, smooth skin, and had no hair at all except at the extreme end of its tail, where there grew exactly 3 stiff, stubby hairs. The beast was dark blue in color, and his face was not fierce nor ferocious in expression, but rather good-humored and droll. Seeing the strangers, the woozy folded his hind legs as if they had been hinged, and sat down to look his visitors over. "Well, well," he exclaimed, "what a queer lot you are. At first I thought some of those miserable Munchkin farmers had come to annoy me, but I am relieved to find you in their stead. It is plain to me that you are a remarkable group, as remarkable in your way as I am in mine, and you are welcome to my domain. Nice place, isn't it? But lonesome. Dreadfully lonesome." "Why did they shut you up here?" asked Scraps, who was regarding the queer square creature with much curiosity. "Because I eat all the honeybees which the Munchkin farmers who live around here keep to make them honey." "Are you very fond of eating honeybees?" inquired the boy. "Very. They are really delicious. But the farmers do not like to lose their bees, and so they tried to destroy me. Of course they couldn't do that." "Why not?" "My skin is so thick and tough that nothing can get through it to hurt me. So finding they could not destroy me, they drove me into this forest and built a fence around me. Unkind, wasn't it?" "But what do you eat now?" asked Ojo. "Nothing at all. I've tried the leaves from the trees and the mouses and creeping vines, but they don't seem to suit my taste. So there being no honeybees here, I've eaten nothing for years." "You must be awfully hungry," said the boy. "I've got some bread and cheese in my basket. Would you like that kind of food?" "Give me a nibble and I will try it. Then I can tell you better whether it is grateful to my appetite," returned the woozy. So the boy opened his basket and broke a piece of the loaf of bread. He tossed it towards the woozy, who cleverly caught it in his mouth and ate it in a twinkling. "That's rather good," declared the animal. "Any more?" "Try some cheese," said Ojo, and threw down a piece. The woozy ate that too and smacked its long, thin lips. "That's mighty good," it exclaimed. "Any more?" "Plenty," replied Ojo. So he sat down on a stump and fed the woozy bread and cheese for a long time, for no matter how much the boy broke off, the loaf and the slice remained just as big. "That'll do," said the woozy at last. "I'm quite full. I hope the strange food won't give me indigestion." "I hope not," said Ojo. "It's what I eat." "Well, I must say I'm much obliged, and I'm glad you came," announced the beast. "Is there anything I can do in return for your kindness?" "Yes," said Ojo earnestly. "You have it in your power to do me a great favor, if you will." "What is it?" asked the woozy. "Name the favor, and I will grant it." I want 3 hairs from the tip of your tail," said Ojo with some hesitation. 3 hairs? Wait, that's all I have. On my tail or anywhere else?" exclaimed the beast. "I know, but I want them very much." "They are my sole ornament, my prettiest feature," said the woozy uneasily. "If I gave up those 3 hairs, I'm just a blockhead." "Yet I must have them," insisted the boy firmly. and he told the Woozy all about the accident to Unc and Margaret, and how the 3 hairs were to be part of the magic charm that would restore them to life. The beast listened with attention, and when Ojo had finished the recital, it said with a sigh, "I always keep my word, for I pride myself on being square. So you may have the 3 hairs, and welcome. I think, under such circumstances, it would be selfish in me to refuse you." "Thank you. Thank you very much," cried the boy joyfully. "May I pull out the hairs now?" "Anytime you like," answered the Woozy. So Ojo went up to the queer creature, and taking hold of one of the hairs, began to pull. He pulled harder. He pulled with all his might, but the hair remained fast. "What's the trouble?" asked the Woozy, which Ojo had dragged here and there all around the clearing in his endeavor to pull out the hair. "It won't come," said the boy, panting. "I was afraid of that," declared the beast. "You'll have to pull harder." "I'll help you," exclaimed Scraps, coming to the boy's side. "You pull the hair, and I'll pull you, and together we ought to get it out easily." "Wait a jiffy," called the Woozy, and then it went to a tree and hugged it with its front paws so that its body couldn't be dragged around by the pull. "All ready now. Go ahead." Ojo grasped the hair with both hands and pulled with all his strength, while Scraps seized the boy around his waist and added his strength to hers. But the hair wouldn't budge. Instead, it slipped out of Ojo's hands, and he and Scraps both rolled upon the ground in a heap and never stopped until they bumped against a rocky cave. "Give it up," advised the glass cat as the boy arose and assisted the Patchwork girl to her feet. "A dozen strong men couldn't pull out those hairs. I believe they're clinched on the underside of the Woozy's thick skin." "Then what shall I do?" asked the boy despairingly. "If on our return I fail to take those 3 hairs to the crooked magician, the other things I have come to seek will be of no use at all, and we cannot restore Unc and Margaret to life." "They're goners, I guess," said the Patchwork girl. "Never mind," added the cat. "I can't see how old Unc and Margaret are worth all this trouble anyhow." But Ojo did not feel that way. He was so disheartened that he sat down upon the stump and began to cry. The Woozy looked at the boy thoughtfully. "Why don't you take me with you?" said the beast. "Then, when at last you get to the magician's house, he can surely find some way to pull out those 3 hairs." Ojo was overjoyed at the suggestion. "That's it," he cried, wiping away the tears and springing to his feet with a smile. "If I take the 3 hairs to the magician, it won't matter if they're still in your body." "It can't matter in the least," agreed the Woozy. "Come on, then," said the boy, picking up his basket. "Let us start at once. I've several other things to find, you know." But the glass cat gave a little laugh and inquired in her scornful way, "How do you intend to get the beast out of this forest?" That puzzled them all for a time. "Let us go to the fence, and then we may find a way," suggested Scraps. So they walked through the forest to the fence, reaching it at a point exactly opposite that where they had entered the enclosure. "How did you get in?" asked the Woozy. "We climbed over," answered Ojo. "I can't do that," said the beast. "I'm a very swift runner, for I can overtake a honeybee as it flies, and I can jump very high, which is the reason they made such a tall fence to keep me in. But I can't climb at all, and I'm too big to squeeze between the bars of the fence." Ojo tried to think about what to do. "Can you dig?" he asked. "No," answered the Woozy, "for I have no claws. My feet are quite flat at the bottom of them. Nor can I gnaw away the boards, as I have no teeth." "You're not such a terrible creature after all," remarked Scraps. "You haven't heard me growl, or you wouldn't say that," declared the Woozy. "When I growl, the sound echoes like thunder all through the valleys and woodlands, and children tremble with fear, and women cover their heads with their aprons, and big men run and hide. I suppose there is nothing in the world so terrible to listen to as the growl of a Woozy." "Please don't growl, then," begged Ojo earnestly. "There is no danger of my growling, for I am not angry. Only when angry do I utter my fearful, ear-splitting, soul-shuddering growl. Also, when I am angry, my eyes flash fire, whether I growl or not." "Real fire?" asked Ojo. "Of course real fire. Do you suppose they'd flash imitation fire?" inquired the Woozy in an injured tone. "In that case, I've solved the riddle," cried Scraps, dancing with glee. "Those fence boards are made of wood, and if the Woozy stands close to the fence and lets his eyes flash fire, they might set fire to the fence and burn it up. Then he could walk away with us easily, being free." "Ah, I've never thought of that plan, or I would have been free long ago," said the Woozy. "But I cannot flash fire from my eyes unless I am very angry." "Can't you get angry about something, please?" asked Ojo. "I'll try. You just say Crizzle-Crew to me." "Will that make you angry?" inquired the boy. "Terribly angry." "What does it mean?" asked Scraps. I don't know. That's what makes me so angry, replied the Woozy. He then stood close to the fence with his head near one of the boards, and Scrap called out, "Crizzle Crew!" And then Ojo said, "Crizzle Crew!" And the Glass Cat said, "Crizzle Crew!" The Woozy began to tremble with anger, and small sparks started from his eyes. Seeing this, they all cried, "Crizzle Crew!" together, and that made the beast's eyes flash fire so fiercely that the fence board caught the sparks and began to smoke. Then it burst into flame, and the Woozy stepped back and said triumphantly, "Aha! That did the business all right. It was a happy thought for you to yell all together, for that made me as angry as I've ever been. Fine sparks, weren't they?" "Regular fireworks," replied Scraps admiringly. In a few moments, the board had burned to a distance of several feet, leaving an opening big enough for them all to pass through. Ojo broke some branches from a tree, and with them whipped the fire until it was extinguished. "We don't want to burn the whole fence down," said he, "for the flames would attract the attention of the Munchkin farmers, who would then come and capture the Woozy again. I guess they'll be rather surprised when they find he's escaped." "So they will," declared the Woozy, chuckling gleefully. "For when they find him gone, the farmers will be badly scared, for they'll expect me to eat up their honeybees as I did before." "That reminds me," said the boy, "that you must promise not to eat honeybees while you are in our country. Company." "None at all?" "Not a bee. You would get us all into trouble, and we can't afford to have any trouble that is necessary. I'll feed you all the bread and cheese you want, and that must satisfy you." "All right, I promise," said the Woozy cheerfully. "And when I promise anything, you can depend on it, because I'm square." "I don't see what difference that makes," observed the Patchwork Girl, as they found the path and continued their journey. "The shape doesn't make a thing honest, does it?" "Of course it does," returned the Woozy very decidedly. "No one could trust that crooked magician, for instance, just because he is crooked. But a square Woozy couldn't do anything crooked if it wanted to." "I am neither square nor crooked," said Scraps, looking down at her plump body. "No, you're round, so you're liable to do anything," asserted the Woozy. "Do not blame me, Miss Gorgeous, if I regard you with suspicion. Many a satin ribbon has a cotton back." Scraps didn't understand this. She had an uneasy misgiving that she had a cotton back herself. It would settle down at times and make her squat and dumpy, and then she had to roll herself in the road until her body stretched out again. Shaggy Man to the rescue. They had not gone very far before Bungle, who had run on ahead, came bounding back to say that the road of yellow bricks was just before them. And once they hurried forward to see what this famous road looked like. It was not a broad road, but not straight, for it wandered over hill and dale and picked out the easiest places to go. All its length and breadth was paved with smooth bricks of a bright yellow color, so it was smooth and level except in a few places where the brick had crumbled or been removed, leaving holes that might cause the unwary to stumble. "I wonder," said Ojo, looking up and down the road, "which way to go." "Where are you bound for?" asked the Woozy. "The Emerald City," he replied. "Then go west," said the Woozy. "I know this road pretty well, for I've chased many a honeybee over it." "Have you ever been to the Emerald City?" asked Scraps. "No, I am very shy by nature, as you may have noticed, so I haven't mingled much in society." "Are you afraid of men?" inquired the Patchwork Girl. "Me? With my heart-rending growl? My horrible, shudderful growl? I should say not. I'm not afraid of anything," declared the Woozy. "I wish I could say the same," sighed Ojo. "I don't think we need to be afraid when we get to the Emerald City, for Unc Nunky has told me that Ozma, our girl ruler, is very lovely and kind, and tries to help everyone who is in trouble. But they say there are many dangers lurking on the road to the Great Fairy City, so we must be very careful." "I hope nothing will break me," said the Glass Cat in a nervous voice. "I'm a little brittle, you know, and can't stand many hard knocks." "If anything should fade the colors of my lovely patches, it would break my heart," said the Patchwork Girl. "I'm not sure you have a heart," Ojo reminded her. "Then it would break my cotton," persisted Scraps. "Do you think they are all fast colors, Ojo?" she asked anxiously. "They seem fast enough when you run," he replied, and then looking ahead of them, he exclaimed, "Oh, what lovely trees!" They were certainly pretty to look upon, and the travelers hurried forward to observe them more closely. "Why, they are not trees at all," said Scraps. "They are just monstrous plants." That is what they really were. Masses of great red leaves which rose from the ground and far into the air until they towered twice as high as the top of the Patchwork Girl's head, who was a little taller than Ojo. The plants formed rows on both sides of the road, and from each plant rose a dozen or more of the big bread loaves, which swayed continually from side to side, although no wind was blowing. But the most curious thing about the swaying leaves was their color. They seemed to have a general groundwork of blue, but here and there other colors glinted at times through the blue. Gorgeous yellows turning to pink, purple, orange, and scarlet, mingled with more somber browns and grays, each appearing as a blotch or stripe anywhere on a leaf and then disappearing to be replaced by some other color of a different shape. The changeful coloring of the great leaves was very beautiful, but it was bewildering as well, and the novelty of the scene drew our travelers close to the line of plants, where they stood watching them with rapt interest. Suddenly a leaf bent lower than usual and touched the Patchwork Girl. Swiftly it enveloped her in her embrace, covering her completely with its thick folds, and then it swayed back upon its stem. "Why, she's gone!" gasped Ojo in amazement, and listened carefully. He thought he could hear the muffled screams of Scraps coming from the center of the folded leaf. But before he could think what he ought to do to save her, another leaf bent down and captured the glass cat, rolling around the little creature until she was completely hidden, and then straightening up again upon its stem. "Look out," said the Woozy. "Run faster, you are lost." Ojo turned and saw the Woozy running swiftly up the road, but the last leaf of the row of plants seized the beast even as he ran, and instantly he disappeared from sight. The boy had no chance to escape. Half a dozen of the great leaves were bending toward him from different directions, and as he stood hesitating, one of them clutched him in its embrace. In a flash he was in the dark. Then he felt himself gently lifted until he was swaying in the air, with the folds of the leaf hugging him on all sides. At first he struggled hard to escape, crying out in anger, "Let me go! Let me go!" But neither struggles nor protests had any effect whatever. The leaf held him firmly, and he was a prisoner. Then Ojo quieted himself and tried to think. Despair fell upon him when he remembered that all his little party had been captured, even as he was, and there was none to save them. "I might have expected it," he sobbed miserably. "I'm Ojo the Unlucky, and something dreadful was sure to happen to me." He pushed against the leaf that held him and found it to be soft, but thick and firm. It was like a great bandage all around him, and he found it difficult to move his body or limbs in order to change their positions. The minutes passed and became hours. Ojo wondered how long one could live in such a condition, and if the leaf would gradually sap his strength and even his life in order to feed itself. The little Munchkin boy had never heard of any person dying in the land of Oz, but he knew one could suffer a great deal of pain. His greatest fear at this time was that he would always remain imprisoned in the beautiful leaf and never see the light of day again. No sound came to him through the leaf. All around was intense silence. Ojo wondered if Scraps had stopped screaming, or if the folds of the leaf prevented his hearing her. By and by he thought he heard a whistle, and of someone whistling a tune. Yes, it really must be someone whistling, he decided, for he could follow the strains of a pretty Munchkin melody that Unc Nunkie used to sing to him. The sounds were low and sweet, and although they reached Ojo's ears very faintly, they were clear and harmonious. Could the leaf whistle? Ojo wondered. Nearer and nearer the sounds came, and they seemed to be just the other side of the leaf that was hugging him. Suddenly the whole leaf toppled and fell, carrying the boy with it, and while he sprawled at full length, the folds slowly relaxed and set him free. He scrambled quickly to his feet and found that a strange man was standing before him, a man so curious in appearance that the boy stared with round eyes. He was a big man with shaggy whiskers, shaggy eyebrows, shaggy hair, but kindly blue eyes that were gentle as those of a cow. On his head was a green velvet hat with a jeweled band, which was all shaggy around the brim. Rich but shaggy laces were at his throat. A coat with shaggy edges was decorated with diamond buttons. The velvet breeches had jeweled buckles at the knees and shags all around the bottom. On his breast hung a medallion bearing the picture of Princess Dorothy of Oz, and in his hand, as he stood looking at Ojo, was a sharp knife shaped like a dagger. "Oh," exclaimed Ojo, greatly astonished at the sight of this stranger, and then he added, "Who has saved me, sir?" "Can't you see?" replied the other with a smile. "I'm the Shaggy Man." "Yes, I can see that," said the boy, nodding. "Was it you who rescued me from the leaf?" "None other, you may be sure. But take care, or I shall have to rescue you again." Ojo gave a jump, for he saw several broad leaves leaning toward him, but the Shaggy Man began to whistle again, and at the sound the leaves all straightened up on their stems and kept still. The man now took Ojo's arm and led him up the road. past the last of the great plants, and not till he was safely beyond their reach did he cease whistling. You see, the music charms him, he said. Singing or whistling, it doesn't matter which. Makes him behave, and nothing else will. I always whistle as I go by him, and so they always let me alone. Today, as I went by whistling, I saw a leaf curled and knew there must be something inside it. I cut down the leaf with my knife, and out you popped. Lucky I passed by, wasn't it? You are very kind, said Ojo, and I thank you. Will you please rescue my companions also? What companions? Asked the Shaggy Man. The leaves grabbed them all, said the boy. There's a patchwork girl, and... A what? A girl made of patchwork, you know. She's alive, and her name is Scraps. And there's a glass cat. Glass? Asked the Shaggy Man. All glass. And alive? Yes, said Ojo. She has pink brains. And there's a woozy. What's a woozy? Inquired the Shaggy Man. Why, I can't describe it, answered the boy, greatly perplexed. But it's a queer animal with 3 hairs on the tip of its tail that won't come out, and... What won't come out? Asked the Shaggy Man. The tail? The hairs won't come out. But you'll see the woozy if you'll please rescue it, and then you'll know just what it is. Of course, said the Shaggy Man, nodding his shaggy head. And then he walked back among the plants, still whistling, and found the 3 leaves which had curled around Ojo's traveling companions. The first leaf he cut down released Scraps, and on seeing her the Shaggy Man drew back his shaggy head, opened wide his mouth, and laughed so shaggily and yet so merrily that Scraps liked him at once. Then he took off his hat and made her a low bow, saying, My dear, you'll wonder. I must introduce you to my friend the Scarecrow. When he cut down the second leaf, he rescued the glass cat, and Bungle was so frightened that she scampered away like a streak and soon had joined Ojo, where she sat behind him, panting and trembling. The last plant of all the row had captured the woozy, and a big bunch in the center of the curled leaf showed plainly where he was. With his sharp knife, the Shaggy Man sliced off the stem of the leaf, and it fell and unfolded out, trotting the woozy and escaped beyond the reach of any more of the dangerous plants. Hello, Wanagi. Welcome. This really is a good story. And yeah, the artwork is pretty good. A good friend. Soon the entire party was gathered on the road of yellow bricks, quite beyond the reach of the beautiful but treacherous plants. The Shaggy Man, staring first at one and then at the other, seemed greatly pleased and interested. I've seen queer things since I came to the Land of Oz, said he, but never anything queerer than this band of adventurers. Let us sit down a while and have a talk and get acquainted. Haven't you always lived in the Land of Oz? Asked the Munchkin boy. No, I used to live in the big outside world, but I came here once with Dorothy, and Ozma let me stay. How do you like Oz? Asked Scraps. Isn't the country and the climate grand? It's the finest country in all the world, even if it is a fairyland, and I'm happy every minute I live in it, said the Shaggy Man. But tell me something about yourselves. So Ojo related the story of his visit to the house of the magician, and how he met the glass cat, and how the Patchwork girl was brought to life, and of the terrible accident to Unc Nunky and Margaret. Then he told how he had set out to find the 5 different things which the magician needed to make a charm which would restore the marble figures to life, one requirement being 3 hairs from a woozy's tail. We found the woozy, exclaimed the boy, and he agreed to give us the 3 hairs, but we couldn't pull them out, so we had to bring the woozy along with us. I see, returned the Shaggy Man, who had listened with interest to the story. But perhaps I, who am big and strong, can pull those 3 hairs from the woozy's tail. Try it if you like, said the woozy. So the Shaggy Man tried it, but pull as hard as he could, he failed to get the hair out of the woozy's tail. So he sat down again and wiped his shaggy face with a shaggy silk handkerchief and said, It doesn't matter. If you can keep the woozy until you get the rest of the things you need, you can take the beast and his 3 hairs to the crooked magician and let him find a way to extract them. What are the other things you are to find? 1, said Ojo, is a 6-leafed clover. You ought to find one in the fields around the Emerald City, said the Shaggy Man. There is a law against picking 6-leafed clovers, but I think I can get Ozma to let you have one. Thank you, replied Ojo. The next thing is the left wing of a yellow butterfly. For that you must go to the Winky Country, the Shaggy Man declared. I've never noticed any butterflies there, but that is the yellow country of Oz, and it's ruled by a good friend of mine, the Tin Woodman. Oh, I've heard of him, exclaimed Ojo. He must be a wonderful man. So he is, and his heart is beautifully kind. I'm sure the Tin Woodsman will do all in his power to help you to save your Unc Nunky and poor Margolette. The next thing I must find, said the Munchkin boy, is a gill of water from a dark well. Indeed. Well, that is more difficult, said the Shaggy Man, scratching his left ear in a puzzled way. I've never heard of a dark well, have you? No, said Ojo. Do you know where one may be found? Inquired the Shaggy Man. I can't imagine, said Ojo. Then we must ask the Scarecrow. The Scarecrow? But surely, sir, a Scarecrow can't know anything. Most Scarecrows don't, I admit, answered the Shaggy Man. But this Scarecrow of whom I speak is very intelligent. He claims to possess the best brains in all Oz. Better than mine? Asked Scraps. Better than mine? Echoed the Glass Cat. Mine are pink, and you can see 'em work. Well, you can't see the Scarecrow's brains work, but they do a lot of clever thinking, asserted the Shaggy Man. If anyone knows where a dark well is, it's my friend the Scarecrow. Where does he live? Inquired Ojo. He has a splendid castle in the Winky Country, near to the palace of his friend the Tin Woodsman, and he is often to be found in the Emerald City, where he visits Dorothy at the royal palace. Then we will ask him about the dark well, said Ojo. But what else does this crooked magician want? Asked the Shaggy Man. A drop of oil from a live man's body. Oh, but there isn't such a thing. That is what I thought, replied Ojo. But the crooked magician said it wouldn't be called for by the recipe if it couldn't be found, and therefore I must search until I find it. I wish you good luck, said the Shaggy Man, shaking his head doubtfully, but I imagine you'll have a hard time getting a drop of oil from a live man's body. There's blood in a body, but not oil. There's cotton in mine, said Scraps, dancing a little jig. I don't doubt it, returned the Shaggy Man admiringly. You're a regular comforter, and as sweet as Patchwork can be. All you lack is dignity. I hate dignity, cried Scraps, kicking a pebble high in the air and then trying to catch it as it fell. Half the fools and all the wise folks are dignified, and I'm neither the one nor the other. She's just crazy, explained the Glass Cat. The Shaggy Man laughed. She's delightful in her way, he said. I'm sure Dorothy will be pleased with her, and the Scarecrow will dote on her. Did you say you were traveling towards the Emerald City? Yes, replied Ojo. I thought that was the best place to go at first, because the six-leaved clover may be found there. I'll go with you, said the Shaggy Man, and show you the way. Thank you, replied Ojo. I hope it won't put you out anyway. No, said the other. I wasn't going anywhere in particular. I've been a rover all my life, and although Ozma has given me a suite of beautiful rooms in her palace, I still get the wandering fever once in a while and start out to roam the country over. I've been away from the Emerald City several weeks this time, and now that I've met you and your friends, I'm sure it will interest me to accompany you to the great city of Oz and introduce you to my friends. That will be very nice, said the boy gratefully. I hope your friends are not dignified, observed Scraps. Some are and some are not, he answered, but I never criticize my friends. If they are really true friends, they may be anything they like for all of me. There's some sense in that, said Scraps, nodding her queer head in approval. Come on, let's get to the Emerald City as soon as possible. With this she ran up the path, skipping and dancing, and then turned to await them. It is quite a distance from here to the Emerald City, remarked the Shaggy Man, so we may not get there today or tomorrow. Therefore let us take the jaunt in an easy manner. I'm an old traveler, and have found that I never gain anything by being in a hurry. Take it easy is my motto. If you can't take it easy, take it as easy as you can. After walking some distance over the road of yellow bricks, Ojo said he was hungry and would stop to eat some bread and cheese. He offered a portion of food to the Shaggy Man, who thanked him but refused. When I start out on my travels, he said, I carry along enough square meals to last me several weeks. I think I'll indulge in one now, as long as we're stopping anyway. In saying this, he took a bottle from his pocket and shook from it a tablet about the size of one of Ojo's fingernails. That, announced the Shaggy Man, is a square meal in condensed form. Invention of the great Professor Wogglebug of the Royal College of Athletics. It contains soup, fish, roast meat, salad, apple dumplings, ice cream, and chocolate drops, all boiled down to this small size, so it can be conveniently carried and swallowed when you are hungry and need a square meal. I'm square, said the Woozy. Give me one, please. So the Shaggy Man gave the Woozy a tablet from his bottle, and the beast ate it in a twinkling. You have now had a 6-course dinner, declared the Shaggy Man. Pshaw, said the Woozy ungratefully. I want to taste something. There's no fun in that sort of eating. One should only eat to sustain life, replied the Shaggy Man, and that tablet is equal to a peck of other food. I don't care for it. I want something I can chew and taste, grumbled the Woozy. You are quite wrong, my poor beast, said the Shaggy Man in a tone of pity. Think how tired your jaws would get chewing a square meal like this if it were not condensed to the size of a small tablet, which you can swallow in a jiffy. Chewing isn't tiresome. It's fun, maintained the Woozy. I always chew the honeybees when I catch them. Give me some bread and cheese, Ojo. No, you've already eaten a big dinner, protested the Shaggy Man. Maybe, answered the Woozy, but I guess I'll fool myself by munching some bread and cheese. I may not be hungry, having eaten all those things you gave me, but I consider this eating business a matter of taste, and I like to realize what's going into me. Ojo gave the beast what he wanted, but the Shaggy Man shook his head reproachfully and said there was no animal so obstinate or hard to convince as a Woozy. At this moment, a patter of footsteps was heard, and looking up, they saw the live phonograph standing before them. It seemed to have passed through many adventures since Ojo and his comrades last saw the machine, for the varnish of its wooden case was all marred and dented, and scratched in a way that gave it an aged and disreputable appearance. Dear me, exclaimed Ojo, staring hard. What has happened to you? Nothing much, replied the phonograph in a sad and depressed voice. I've had enough things thrown at me since I left you to stock a department store and furnish 6 bargain counters. Are you so broken that you can't play? Asked Scraps. No, I am still able to grind out delicious music. Just now I have a record on tap that is really superb, said the phonograph, growing more cheerful. That is too bad, remarked Ojo. We have no objection to you as a machine, you know. But as a music maker, we hate you. Then why was I ever invented? Demanded the machine in a tone of indignant protest. They looked at one another inquiringly, but no one could answer such a puzzling question. Finally, the Shaggy Man said, I'd like to hear the phonograph play. Ojo sighed. We've been very happy since we met you, sir, he said. I know, but a little misery at times makes one appreciate happiness more. Tell me, Phony, what is this record I like, which you say you have on tap? It's a popular song, sir. In all civilized lands, the common people have gone wild over it. Makes civilized folks wild folks, eh? Then it's dangerous. Wild with joy, I mean, exclaimed the phonograph. Listen, this song will prove a rare treat to you, I know. It made the author rich, for an author. It is called My Lulu. Then the phonograph began to play. A string of odd, jerky sounds was followed by these words, sung by a man through his nose with a great vigor of expression. I wants my Lulu, my coal black Lulu. I wants my Lulu, 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 Lulu. I loves my Lulu, my coal black Lulu. There ain't nobody else loves Lulu, Lulu. Here, shut that off, cried the Shaggy Man, springing to his feet. What do you mean by such impertinence? It's the latest popular song, declared the phonograph, speaking in a sulky tone of voice. A popular song. Yes, one that the feeble-minded can remember the words of, and those ignorant of music can whistle or sing. That makes a popular song popular, and the time is coming when it will take the place of all other songs. That time won't come to us just yet, said the Shaggy Man. I'm something of a singer myself, and I don't intend to be throttled by any Lulus like your coal black one. I shall take you all apart, Mr. Phony, and scatter your pieces far and wide over the country as a matter of kindness to the people you might meet if allowed to run around loose. Having performed this painful duty, I shall... But before he could say any more, the phonograph turned and dashed up the road as fast as its 4 table legs could carry it, and soon it had entirely disappeared from their view. The Shaggy Man sat down again and seemed well pleased. Someone else will have to save me the trouble of scattering that phonograph, said he, for it is not possible that such a music maker can last long in the land of Oz. When you are rested, friends, let us go on our way. During the afternoon, the travelers found themselves in a lonely and uninhabited part of the country. Even the fields were no longer cultivated, and the country seemed to resemble a wilderness. The road of yellow bricks seemed to have been neglected and became uneven and more difficult to walk upon. Scrubby underbrush grew on the other side of the way, while huge rocks were scattered around in abundance. But this did not deter Ojo and his friends from trudging on, and they beguiled the journey with jokes and cheerful conversation. Toward evening they reached a crystal spring which gushed from a tall rock by the roadside, and near the spring stood a deserted cabin. Said the Shaggy Man, halting there, "We may as well pass the night here, where there is shelter for our heads and good water to drink. Road beyond here is pretty bad, worse we shall have to travel, so let's wait until morning before we tackle it." They agreed to this, and Ojo found some brushwood in the cabin and made a fire on the hearth. The fire delighted Scraps, who danced before it until Ojo warned her she might set fire to herself and burn up. After that, the Patchwork Girl kept at a respectful distance from the darting flames, but the Woozy lay down before the fire like a big dog and seemed to enjoy its warmth. For supper, the Shaggy Man ate one of his tablets, but Ojo stuck to his bread and cheese as the most satisfying food. He also gave a portion to the Woozy. When darkness came on, and they sat in a circle on the cabin floor, facing the firelight, there being no furniture of any sort in the place, Ojo said to the Shaggy Man, "Won't you tell us a story?" "I'm not good at stories," was the reply, "but I sing like a bird." "Raven or crow?" asked the Glass Cat. "Like a songbird. I'll prove it. I'll sing a song I composed myself. Don't tell anyone I'm a poet. They might want me to write a book. Don't tell them I can sing, or they'll want me to make records for that awful phonograph. I haven't time to be a public benefactor, so I'll just sing you this little song for your own amusement." They were glad enough to be entertained, and listened with interest while the Shaggy Man chanted the following verses to a tune that was not unpleasant. "I'll sing a song of Ozland, where wondrous creatures dwell, and fruits and flowers and shady bowers abode in every dell. Where magic is a science, and where no one shows surprise if some amazing thing takes place right before his eyes. Our ruler's a bewitching girl whom fairies love to please. She's always kept her magic scepter to enforce decrees, to make her people happy, for her heart is kind and true. And to aid the needy and distressed is what she longs to do. And then there's Princess Dorothy, as sweet as any rose, a lass from Kansas, where they don't grow fairies, I suppose. And there's this brainy scarecrow with a body stuffed with straw, who utters words of wisdom rare that fill us all with awe. I'll not forget Nick Chopper, the woodman made of tin, whose tender heart thinks killing time is quite a dreadful sin. Nor old Professor Wogglebog, who's highly magnified, and looks so big to everyone that he is filled with pride. Jack Pumpkinhead's a dear old chum, who might be called a chump, but one renowned by riding round upon a magic rump. The sawhorse is a splendid steed, and though he's made of wood, he does as many thrilling stunts as any meat horse would. And now I'll introduce a beast that everyone adores. The Cowardly Lion shakes with fear most every time he roars, and yet he does the bravest things that any lion might, because he knows that cowardice is not considered right. There's Tick-Tock. He's a clockwork man and quite a funny sight. He talks and walks mechanically when he's wound up tight. And we've a hungry tiger who babies love to eat, but never does because we feed him other kinds of meat. It's hard to name all the freaks this noble land's acquired. 'Twould make my song so very long that you would soon be tired. But give attention while I mention one wise yellow hen, and 9 fine tiny piglets living in a golden pen. Just search the whole world over, sail the seas from coast to coast. No other nation in creation queerer folks can boast. And now our rare museum will include a cat of glass, a woozy, and, last but not least, a crazy patchwork lass." Ojo was so pleased with this song that he applauded the singer by clapping his hands, and Scraps followed suit by clapping her padded fingers together, although they made no noise. The cat pounded on the floor with her glass paws, gently so as not to break them, and the Woozy, which had been asleep, woke up to ask what the row was about. "I seldom sing in public for fear they might want me to start an opera company," remarked the Shaggy Man, who was pleased to know his effort was appreciated. "Voice just now is a little out of training. Rusty, perhaps." "Tell me," said the Patchwork Girl earnestly, "do all those queer people you mentioned really live in the land of Oz?" "Every one of them. I even forgot one thing. Dorothy's pink kitten." "For goodness sake," exclaimed Bungle, sitting up and looking interested. "A pink kitten? How absurd. Is it glass?" "No, just ordinary kitten." "Then it can't amount to much. I have pink brains, and you can see 'em work. Dorothy's kitten is all pink, brains and all, except blue eyes. Name's Eureka. Great favorite at the royal palace, said the Shaggy Man, yawning. The glass kitten seemed annoyed. Do you think a pink kitten, common meat, is as pretty as I am? She asked. Can't say. Tastes differ, you know, replied the Shaggy Man, yawning again. But here's a pointer that may be of service to you. Make friends with Eureka and you'll be solid at the palace. I'm solid now, solid glass. Don't understand, rejoined the Shaggy Man sleepily. Anyhow, make friends with the pink kitten and you'll be all right. If the pink kitten despises you, look out for breakers. Would anyone at the royal palace break a glass cat? Might. You never can tell. Advise you to purr soft and look humble, if you can. And now I'm going to bed. Bungo considered the Shaggy Man's advice so carefully that her pink brains were busy long after the others of the party were fast asleep. Chapter 12. The Great Porcupine. Next morning they started out bright and early to follow the road of yellow bricks towards the Emerald City. The little Munchkin boy was beginning to feel tired from the long walk, and he had a great many things to think of and consider besides the events of the journey. At the wonderful Emerald City, which he would presently reach, there were so many strange and curious people that he was half afraid of meeting them, and wondered if they would prove friendly and kind. Above all else, he could not drive from his mind the important errand on which he had come, and he was determined to devote every energy to finding the things that were necessary to prepare the magic recipe. He believed that until dear Aunt Kanunki was restored to life, he could feel no joy in anything, and often he wished that Aunt could be with him to see all the astonishing things Ojo was seeing. But alas, Aunt Kanunki was now a marble statue in the house of the crooked magician, and Ojo must not falter in his efforts to save him. The country through which they were passing was still rocky and deserted, with here and there a bush or a tree to break the dreary landscape. Ojo noticed one tree especially because it had such long, silky leaves and was so beautiful in shape. As he approached it, he studied the tree earnestly, wondering if any fruit grew on it or if it bore pretty flowers. Suddenly he became aware that he had been looking at that tree a long time, at least for 5 minutes, and it had remained in the same position, although the boy had continued to walk steadily on. So he stopped short, and when he stopped, the tree and all the landscape, as well as his companions, moved on before him and left him far behind. Ojo uttered a cry of astonishment that had aroused the Shaggy Man, who also halted. The others then stopped too and walked back to the boy. What's wrong? Asked the Shaggy Man. Why, we're not moving forward a bit, no matter how fast we walk, declared Ojo. Now that we've stopped, we're moving backward. Can't you see? Just notice that rock. Scraps looked down at her feet and said, The yellow bricks are not moving. But the whole road is, answered Ojo. True, quite true, answered the Shaggy Man. I know all about the tricks of this road, but I had been thinking of something else and didn't realize where we were. It will carry us back to where we started from, predicted Ojo, beginning to be nervous. No, replied the Shaggy Man, it won't do that, for I know a trick to beat this tricky road. I've traveled this way before, you know. Turn around, all of you, and walk backward. What good will that do? Asked the cat. You'll find out if you obey me, said the Shaggy Man. So they all turned their backs to the direction in which they wished to go and began walking backward. In an instant, Ojo noticed they were gaining ground, and as they proceeded in this curious way, they soon passed the tree which had first attracted his attention to their difficulty. How long must we keep this up, Shags? Asked Straps, who was constantly tripping and tumbling down, only to get up again with a laugh at her mishap. Just a little way further, replied the Shaggy Man. A few minutes later he called around to them to turn around quickly and step forward, and as they obeyed the order they found themselves treading solid ground. The task is well over, observed the Shaggy Man. It's a little tiresome to walk backwards, but that is the only way to pass this part of the road, which has a trick of sliding back and carrying with it anyone who is walking upon it. With new courage and energy they now trudged forward, and after a time came to a place where the road cut through a low hill, leaving high banks on either side of it. They were traveling along this cut, talking together, when the Shaggy Man seized Scraps with one arm and Ojo with the other and shouted, Stop! What's wrong now? Asked the Patchwork girl. See there, answered the Shaggy Man, pointing with his finger. Directly in the center of the road lay a motionless object that bristled all over with sharp quills, which resembled arrows. The body was as big as a 10-bushel basket, but the projecting quills made it appear to be 4 times bigger. Well, what of it? Asked Scraps. That is Chiss, who causes a lot of trouble along this road, was the reply. Chiss? What is Chiss? I think it is merely an overgrown porcupine, but here in Oz they consider Chiss an evil spirit. He's different from a regular porcupine because he can throw his quills in any direction, which an American porcupine cannot do. That's what makes old Chiss so dangerous. If we get too near, he'll fire those quills at us and hurt us badly. Though we will be foolish to get too near, said Scraps. I'm not afraid, declared the Woozy. The Chiss is cowardly, I'm sure, and if it ever heard my awful, terrible, frightening growl, it would be scared stiff. Oh, can you growl? Asked the Shaggy Man. That is the only ferocious thing about me, asserted the Woozy with evident pride. My growl makes an earthquake blush and the thunder ashamed of itself. If I growled at that creature you call Chiss, it would immediately think the world had cracked in two and bumped against the sun and moon, and that would cause the monster to run as fast and as far as its legs could carry it. In that case, said the Shaggy Man, you are now able to do us all a great favor. Please growl. But you forget, returned the Woozy. My tremendous growl would also frighten you, and if you happen to have heart disease, you might expire. True, but we must take that risk, decided the Shaggy Man bravely. Being warned of what is to occur, we must try to bear the terrific noise of your growl, but Chiss won't expect it, and it will scare him away. The Woozy hesitated. I'm fond of you all, and I hate to shock you, it said. Never mind, said Ojo. You may be made deaf. If so, we will forgive you. Very well, then, said the Woozy in a determined voice, and advanced a few steps towards the giant porcupine. Pausing to look back, it asked, All ready? All ready, they answered. Then cover up your ears and brace yourselves firmly. Now then, look out. The Woozy turned toward Chiss, opened wide its mouth, and said, Quee, eek, eek. Go ahead and growl, said Scraps. Why, I did growl, retorted the Woozy, who seemed much astonished. What, that little squeak, she cried. It is the most awful growl that ever was heard, on land or sea, in caverns or in the sky, protested the Woozy. I wonder you stood the shock so well. Didn't you feel the ground tremble? I suppose Chiss is now quite dead with fright. The Shaggy Man laughed merrily. Poor Woos, said he. Your growl wouldn't scare a fly. The Woozy seemed to be humiliated and surprised. It hung its head a moment, as if in shame or sorrow, and then it said with renewed confidence, Anyhow, my eyes can flash fire, and good fire, too. Good enough to set a fence on fire. That is true, declared Scraps. I saw it done myself. But your ferocious growl isn't as loud as the tick of a beetle, or one of Ojo's snores when he's fast asleep. Perhaps, said the Woozy humbly, and I have been mistaken about my growl. It has always sounded very fearful to me, but that may be because it was so close to my ears. Never mind, said Ojo soothingly. It is a great talent to be able to flash fire from your eyes. No one else can do that. As they stood hesitating what to do, Chiss stirred, and suddenly a shower of quills came flying towards them, almost filling the air, there were so many. Scraps realized in an instant that they had gone too far to Chiss for safety, so she sprang in front of Ojo and shielded him from the darts, which struck their points into her own body until she resembled one of those targets they shoot arrows at in archery games. The Shaggy Man dropped flat on his face to avoid the shower, but one quill struck him in the leg and went far in. As for the glass cat, the quills rattled off her body without making even a scratch, and the skin of the Woozy was so thick and tough that he was not hurt at all. When the attack was over, they all ran for the Shaggy Man, who was moaning and groaning, and Scraps promptly pulled the quill out of his leg. Then he jumped up and ran over to Chiss, putting his foot on the monster's neck and holding it a prisoner. The body of the great porcupine was now as smooth as leather, except for all the holes where the quills had been, for it had shot every single quill in that one wicked shower. Let me go, he shouted angrily. How dare you put your foot on Chiss? I'm going to do worse than that, old boy, replied the Shaggy Man. You have annoyed travelers on this road long enough, and now I shall put an end to you. You can't, returned Chiss. Nothing can kill me, as you know perfectly well. Perhaps that is true, said the Shaggy Man in a tone of disappointment. Seems to me I've been told before that you can't be killed. But if I let you go, what will you do? Pick up my quills again, said Chiss in a sulky voice, and then shoot them at more travelers? No, that won't do. You must promise me to stop throwing quills at people." "I won't promise anything of the sort," declared Chiss. "Why not?" "Because it is my nature to throw quills, and every animal must do what nature intends it to do. It isn't fair for you to blame me. If it were wrong for me to throw quills, then I wouldn't be made with quills to throw. The proper thing for you to do is to keep out of my way." "Right, there is some sense in that argument," admitted the Shaggy Man thoughtfully. "But people who are strangers and don't know you were here won't be able to keep out of your way." "Tell you what," said Scraps, who was trying to pull the quills out of her own body. "Let's gather up all the quills and take them away with us. Then all just won't have any left to throw at people." "Ah, that's a clever idea. You and Ojo must gather up the quills while I hold Chiss a prisoner. For if I let him go, he will get some of his quills and be able to throw them again." So Scraps and Ojo picked up the quills and tied them in a bundle so they might easily be carried. After this, the Shaggy Man released Chiss and let him go, knowing that he was harmless to injure anyone. "It's the meanest trick I ever heard of," muttered the porcupine gloomily. "How would you like it, Shaggy Man, if I took all your shags away from you?" "If I threw my shags and hurt people, you would be welcome to capture them," was the reply. Then they walked on and left Chiss standing in the road, sullen and disconsolate. The Shaggy Man limped as he walked, for his wounds still hurt him, and Scraps was much annoyed because the quills had left a number of small holes in her patches. When they came to a flat stone by the roadside, the Shaggy Man sat down to rest, and then Ojo opened his basket and took out the bundle of charms the crooked magician had given him. "I am Ojo the Unlucky," he said, "or we would never have met that dreadful porcupine. But I will see if I can find anything among the charms that will cure your leg." Soon he discovered that one of the charms was labeled for flesh wounds, and this the boy separated from the others. It was only a bit of dried root taken from some unknown shrub, but the boy rubbed it upon the wound made by the quill, and in a few moments the place was healed entirely, and the Shaggy Man's leg was as good as ever. "Rub it on the holes in my patches," suggested Scraps, and Ojo tried it, but without any effect. "The charm you need is a needle and thread," said Shaggy Man. "Do not worry, my dear. Those holes do not look badly at all. They'll let in the air, and I don't want people to think I'm airy, or that I've been stuck up," said the Patchwork Girl. "You were certainly stuck up until we pulled out those quills," observed Ojo with a sigh. So now they went on again, and coming presently to a pond of muddy water, they tied a heavy stone to the bundle of quills and sunk it to the bottom of the pond to avoid carrying it further. Scraps and the Scarecrow. From here on, the country improved, and the desert places began to give way to fertile spots. Still no houses were yet to be seen near the road. There were some hills with valleys between them, and on reaching the top of one of those hills, the travelers found before them a high wall, running to the right and the left as far as their eyes could reach. Immediately in front of them where the wall crossed the roadway, stood a gate having stout iron bars that extended from top to bottom. They found on coming nearer that this gate was locked with a great padlock, rusty through lack of use. "Well," said Scraps, "I guess we'll stop here." "It's a good guess," replied Ojo. "Our way is barred by this great wall and gate. It looks as if no one had passed through in many years." "Looks are deceiving," declared the Shaggy Man, laughing at their disappointed faces. "And this barrier is the most deceiving thing in all of Oz." "It prevents our going any further anyhow," said Scraps. "There is no one to mind the gate and let people through, and we've no key to the padlock." "True," replied Ojo, going a little nearer to peep through the bars of the gate. "What shall we do, Shaggy Man? If we had wings, we might fly over the wall, but we cannot climb it. Unless we get to the Emerald City, I won't be able to find the things to restore Unc Monkey to life." "All very true," answered the Shaggy Man quietly. "But I know this gate, having passed through it many times." "How?" they all eagerly inquired. "I'll show you how," he said. He stood Ojo in the middle of the road and placed Scraps just behind him with her padded hands on his shoulders. After the Patchwork Girl came the Woozy, who held a part of her skirt in his mouth. Then last of all was the glass cat, holding fast to the Woozy's tail with her glass jaws. "Now," said the Shaggy Man, "you must all shut your eyes tight and keep them shut until I tell you to open them." "I can't," objected Scraps. "My eyes are buttons, and they won't shut." So the Shaggy Man tied his red handkerchief over the Patchwork Girl's eyes and examined all the others to make sure they had their eyes fast shut and could see nothing. "What's the game anyhow? Blind man's bluff?" asked Scraps. "Keep quiet," commanded the Shaggy Man sternly. "All ready? Then follow me." He took Ojo's hand and led him forward over the road of yellow bricks towards the gate. Holding fast to one another, they all followed in a row, expecting every minute to bump against the iron bars. The Shaggy Man also had his eyes closed, but marched straight ahead nevertheless, and after he had taken 100 steps by actual count, he stopped and said, "Now you may open your eyes." They did so, and to their astonishment found the wall and the gateway far behind them, while in front the former blue country of the Munchkins had given way to green fields with pretty farmhouses scattered among them. "That wall," exclaimed the Shaggy Man, "is what is called an optical illusion. It is quite real while you have your eyes open. But if you are not looking at it, the barrier doesn't exist at all. It's the same way with many other evils in life. They seem to exist, and yet it's all seeming and not true. You will notice that the wall, or what we thought was a wall, separates the Munchkin country from the green country that surrounds the Emerald City, which lies exactly in the center of Oz. There are 2 roads of yellow bricks through the Munchkin country, but the one we traveled is the best of the 2. Dorothy once traveled the other way and met with more dangers than we did. But all our troubles are over for the present, as another day's journey will bring us to the Green Emerald City." They were delighted to know this and proceeded with new courage. In a couple of hours, they stopped at a farmhouse where the people were very hospitable and invited them to dinner. The farm folk regarded Scraps with much curiosity but no great astonishment, for they were accustomed to see extraordinary people in the land of Oz. The woman of the house got her needle and thread and sewed up the holes made by the porcupine quills in the Patchwork Girl's body, after which Scraps was assured she looked as beautiful as ever. "You ought to have a hat to wear," remarked the woman, "for that would keep the sun from fading the colors of your face. I have some patches and scraps put away, and if you will wait 2 or 3 days, I'll make you a lovely hat that will match the rest of you." "Never mind the hat," said Scraps, shaking her yarn braids. "It's a kind offer, but we can't stop. I can't see that my colors have faded a particle as yet, can you?" "Not much," replied the woman. "You're still very gorgeous in spite of your long journey." The children of the house wanted to keep the glass cat to play with, so Bungle was offered a good home if she would remain, but the cat was too much interested in Ojo's adventures and refused to stop. "Children are rough playmates," she remarked to the Shaggy Man, "and although this home is more pleasant than that of the Crooked Magician, I fear I would soon be smashed to pieces by the boys and girls." After they had rested themselves, they renewed their journey, finding the road now smooth and pleasant to walk upon, and the country growing more beautiful the nearer they drew to the Emerald City. By and by, Ojo began to walk on the green grass, looking carefully around him. "What are you trying to find?" asked Scraps. "A 6-leaf clover," said he. "Don't do that," exclaimed the Shaggy Man earnestly. "It's against the law to pick a 6-leaf clover. You must wait until you get Ozma's consent." "She wouldn't know it," declared the boy. "Ozma knows many things," said the Shaggy Man. "In her room is a magic picture that shows any scene in the land of Oz where strangers or travelers happen to be. She may be watching the picture of us even now and noticing everything that we do." "Does she always watch the magic picture?" asked Ojo. "Not always, for she has many other things to do, but as I said, she may be watching us this very minute." "I don't care," said Ojo in an obstinate tone of voice. "Ozma's only a girl." The Shaggy Man looked at him in surprise. "You ought to care for Ozma," said he, "if you expect to save your uncle. For if you displease our powerful ruler, your journey will surely prove a failure. Whereas if you make a friend of Ozma, she will gladly assist you. As for her being a girl, that is another reason why you should obey her laws. You are courteous and polite. Everyone in Oz loves Ozma and hates her enemies, for she is just as she is powerful." Ojo sulked a while, but finally returned to the road and kept away from the green clover. The boy was moody and bad-tempered for an hour or 2 afterwards, because he could really see no harm in picking a 6-leaf clover, if he found one. In spite of what the Shaggy Man had just said, he considered Ozma's law to be unjust. They presently came to a beautiful grove of tall and stately trees, through which the road wound in sharp curves, first one way and then another. As they were walking through this grove, they heard someone in the distance singing, and the sounds grew nearer and nearer until they could distinguish the words, although the bend in the road still hid the singer. The song was something like this: "Here's to the hale old bale of straw that's cut from the waving grain, the sweetest sight man ever saw in forest, dell, or plain. It fills me with a crunkling joy, a straw stack to behold, for when I pad this lucky boy with strands of yellow gold." "Ah," exclaimed the Shaggy Man, "here comes my friend the Scarecrow." "What, a live scarecrow?" asked Ojo. "Yes, the one I told you of. He's a splendid fellow and very intelligent. You'll like him, I'm sure." Just then the famous Scarecrow of Oz came around the bend in the road, riding astride a wooden sawhorse which was so small that its rider's legs barely touched the ground. The Scarecrow wore the blue dress of the Munchkins, in which country he was made, and on his head was set a peaked hat with a flat brim trimmed with tinkling bells. A rope was tied around his waist to hold him in shape, for he was stuffed with straw in every part of him except the top of his head, where at one time the Wizard of Oz had placed sawdust mixed with needles and pins to sharpen his wits. The head itself was merely a bag of cloth fastened to the body at the neck, and on the front of this bag were painted the face, ears, eyes, nose, and mouth. The Scarecrow's face was very interesting, for it bore a comical and yet winning expression, although one eye was a bit larger than the other, and the ears were not maid's. The Munchkin farmer who had made the Scarecrow had neglected to sew him together with close stitches, and therefore some of the straw with which he was stuffed was inclined to stick out between the seams. His hands consisted of padded white gloves, with the fingers long and rather limp, and on his feet he wore Munchkin boots of blue leather, with broad turns at the tops of them. The sawhorse was almost as curious as its rider. It had been rudely made, in beginning to saw logs upon, so that its body was a short length of a log, and its legs were stout branches fitted into 4 holes made in the body. The tail was formed by a small branch that had been left on the log, while the head was a gnarled lump on the end of the body. 2 nuts of wood formed the eyes, and the mouth was a gash chopped in the log. When the Scarecrow first came to life, it had no ears at all, and so could not hear, but the boy who then owned him had whittled 2 ears out of bark and stuck them in the head, after which the sawhorse heard very distinctly. This queer wooden horse was a great favorite with Princess Ozma, who had caused the bottom of its legs to be shod with plates of gold so the wood would not wear away. Its saddle was made of cloth of gold richly encrusted with precious gems. It had never worn a bridle. As the Scarecrow came in sight of the party of travelers, he reined in his wooden steed and dismounted, greeted the Shaggy Man with a smiling nod. Then he turned to stare at the Patchwork Girl in wonder, while she in turn stared at him. "Shags," he whispered, drawing the Shaggy Man aside. "Pat me into shape, there's a good fellow." While his friend punched and patted the Scarecrow's body to smooth out the humps, Scrap turned to Ojo and whispered, "Roll me out, please. I've sagged down dreadfully from walking so much, and men like to see a stately figure." She then fell upon the ground, and the boy rolled her back and forth like a rolling pin, until the cotton had filled all the spaces in her patchwork covering, and the body had lengthened to its fullest extent. Scraps and the Scarecrow both finished their hasty toilets at the same time, and again they faced each other. "Allow me, Miss Patchwork," said the Shaggy Man, "to present my friend, the Right Royal Scarecrow of Oz. Scarecrow, this is Miss Scraps Patches. Scraps, this is the Scarecrow. Scarecrow, Scraps, Scraps, Scarecrow." They both bowed with much dignity. "Forgive me for staring so rudely," said the Scarecrow, "but you are the most beautiful sight my eyes have ever beheld." "That is a high compliment for one who is himself so beautiful," murmured Scraps, casting her suspender-button eyes by lowering her head. "But tell me, good sir, are you not a trifle lumpy?" "Yes, of course, that's my straw, you know. It bunches up sometimes, in spite of all my efforts to keep it even." "Doesn't your straw ever bunch?" "Oh, I'm stuffed with cotton," said Scraps. "It never bunches, but it's inclined to pack down or make me sag." "Cotton is a high-grade stuffing. I may say it is even more stylish, not to say aristocratic, than straw," said the Scarecrow politely. "Still, it is but proper that one so entrancingly lovely should have the best stuffing there is going. I'm so glad I've met you, Miss Scraps. Introduce us again, Shaggy." "Once is enough," replied the Shaggy Man, laughing at his friend's enthusiasm. "Then tell me where you found her, and dear me, what a queer cat. What are you made of? Gelatin?" "Pure glass," answered the cat, proud to have attracted the Scarecrow's attention. "I'm much more beautiful than the Patchwork Girl. I'm transparent, and Scraps isn't. I've pink brains. You can see 'em work. And I've a ruby heart, finely polished, while Scraps hasn't any heart at all." "No more have I," said the Scarecrow, shaking hands with Scraps as if to congratulate her on the fact. "I've a friend, the Tin Woodsman, who has a heart, but I find I get along pretty well without one. And so, well, here's a little Munchkin boy, too. Shake hands, my little man. How are you?" Ojo placed his hands in the flabby stuffed glove that served the Scarecrow for a hand, and the Scarecrow pressed it so cordially that the straw in his glove crackled. Meantime, the Woozy had approached the sawhorse and began to sniff at it. The sawhorse resented this familiarity, and with a sudden kick patted the woozy squarely on its head with one golden-shod foot. "Take that, you monster!" it cried angrily. The woozy never even winked. "To be sure," he said, "I'll take anything I have to. But don't make me angry, you wooden beast, or my eyes will flash fire and burn you up." The sawhorse rolled its knot eyes wickedly and kicked again, but the woozy trotted away and said to the scarecrow, "What a sweet disposition that creature has. I advise you to chop it up for kindling wood and use me to ride upon. My back is flat and you can't fall off." "I think the trouble is that you haven't been properly introduced," said the scarecrow, regarding the woozy with much wonder, for he had never seen such a queer animal before. "The sawhorse is the favorite steed of Princess Ozma, the ruler of the land of Oz, and he lives in a stable decorated with pearls and emeralds at the rear of the royal palace. He is swift as the wind, untiring, and is kind to his friends. All the people of Oz respect the sawhorse highly, and when I visit Ozma, she sometimes allows me to ride him, as I am doing today. Now you know what an important personage the sawhorse is, and if someone, perhaps yourself, will tell me your name, your rank, and your station, and your history, it will give me pleasure to relate that to the sawhorse. This will lead to mutual respect and friendship." The woozy was somewhat abashed by this speech and did not know how to reply, but Ojo said, "This square beast is called the woozy, and he isn't of much importance except that he has 3 hairs growing on the tip of his tail." The scarecrow looked and saw that this was true. "But," said he in a puzzled way, "what makes those 3 hairs important? The Shaggy Man has thousands of hairs, but no one has ever accused him of being important." So Ojo related the sad story. Let me try that again. So Ojo related the sad story of Unc Nunkey's transformation into a marble statue, and told how he had set out to find the things the crooked magician wanted in order to make a charm that would restore his uncle to life. One of the requirements was 3 hairs from a woozy's tail, but not being able to pull out the hairs, they had been obliged to take the woozy with them. The scarecrow looked grave as he listened and shook his head several times as if in disapproval. "We must see Ozma about this matter," he said. "The crooked magician is breaking the law by practicing magic without a license, and I'm not sure Ozma will allow him to restore your uncle to life." "Already I have warned the boy of that," declared the Shaggy Man. At this, Ojo began to cry. "I want my Unc Nunkey," he exclaimed. "I know how he can be restored to life, and I'm going to do it. Ozma or no Ozma, what right has this girl ruler to keep my Uncle Nunkey a statue forever?" "Don't worry about that just now," advised the scarecrow. "Go on to the Emerald City, and when you reach it, have the Shaggy Man take you to see Dorothy. Tell her your story, and I'm sure she will help you. Dorothy is Ozma's best friend, and if you can win her to your side, your uncle is pretty safe to live again." Then he turned to the woozy and said, "I'm afraid you are not important enough to be introduced to the sawhorse after all." "I'm a better beast than he is," retorted the woozy indignantly. "My eyes can flash fire, and his can't." "Is this true?" inquired the sawhorse, turning to the munchkin boy. "Yes," said Ojo, and they told how the woozy had set fire to the fence. "Have you any other accomplishments?" asked the scarecrow. "I have a most terrible growl, that is, sometimes," said the woozy, as Scraps laughed merrily and the Shaggy Man smiled. But the Patchwork girl's laugh made the scarecrow forget all about the woozy. He said to her, "What an admirable young lady you are, and what jolly good company. We must be better acquainted, for never before have I met a girl with such exquisite coloring, such natural, artless manners." "No wonder they call you the wise scarecrow," replied Scraps. "When you arrive at the Emerald City, I will see you again," continued the scarecrow. "Just now I am going to call upon an old friend, an ordinary young lady named Ginger, who has promised to repaint my left ear for me. You may have noticed that the paint on my left ear has peeled off and faded, which affects my hearing on that side. Ginger always fixes me up when I get weather-worn." "When do you expect to return to the Emerald City?" asked the Shaggy Man. "I'll be there this evening, for I'm anxious to have a long talk with Miss Scraps. How is it, Sawhorse? Are you equal to a swift